Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punches!
I'm real revolutionary right now. Black power.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Hey, Black, I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Folks, it's July 23rd, 2026, coming up on Lonn Hartman Unfiltered, streaming live on the Black Star Network. It's been more than a week since Detroit area youth mentor Lonn Hartman was found with life-threatening neck wounds at the Bliss-fest Music Festival in northern Michigan. We'll talk to Hartman's friend and the family spokesperson about the investigation. Howard University, lots of drama. They've been getting blown up on social media. Upwards of 500 students say they were actually unenrolled despite believing their financial aid, grants, and scholarships covered their tuition. We'll talk to one of the students impacted and an expert to explain next. A former JPMorgan Chase vice president is suing the financial giant for discrimination. She'll join us with her attorney to explain some of the things she had to endure. Plus, I'll share my conversation with New York Mayor Mamdani about his plans for New York's black community. Congressman Hakeem Jeffries calls out Donald Trump over the issue of affordability, and massive protests taking place in Madison, Wisconsin over an officer-involved shooting of a black man. It is time to bring the funk. I'm Lonn Hartman Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Let's go.
Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the fine. And when it breaks, he's right on time and it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling. It's on roll, y'all. It's rolling Martin, rolling with rolling now. He's funky, he's fresh, he's real, the best, you know he's rolling Martin now.
Family and friends are demanding answers after a 37-year-old black man suffered devastating injuries at a music festival in northern Michigan. Lonn Hartman is recovering after being found Sunday morning, July 12th, naked inside his tent at Bliss-fest in Harbor Springs. Hartman had deep lacerations to his neck. He lost 8 pints of blood and was hospitalized hours before he was found. Hartman sent a text message to his friend Therese Garnier saying he did not feel safe. His friends are sharing concern about how the case is being investigated. The Emmett County Sheriff's Department says nothing has been ruled out and the case remains active. Hartman's friend and family spokesperson, Therese Garnier, join us right now. Glad to have you here. So this was a music festival, correct?
That's correct. And just for clarification, too, he had texted me earlier that day at 2 p.m. He actually texted another friend that evening that he felt unsafe.
So, okay, this is a music festival, okay, and we talked about a tent. So was it a multi-day festival? Was it, and it's one of these festivals where, you stay overnight?
Mm-hmm. So basically, he had attended this festival last year just as a guest. This year, he was there as a performer. So he came up Friday to perform Friday night and then again Saturday evening. And so they have tents that families, those that are participating, can stay in. Some people bring campers, things of that nature. And so he had his own tent that he had set up for him to stay in, between the times that he was doing his performances. Okay. So
when did this event, this assault or whatever, take place? Was it overnight? So was he staying overnight, or did he, just try to understand, did he go to the site, hey, sort of like when you have a trailer somewhere, hey, this is where you hang out, and then when you're done, you leave, go to your hotel, come back the next day? Or was he staying in the tent overnight?
So how it's set up is he came here, he set up a tent, he was staying overnight every night.
Got it.
So when the incident, so he'd already stayed overnight Friday night, and then he stayed overnight Saturday night, and they believe that the assault occurred early Sunday morning between 2 and 4 o'clock.
Has he given any indication? Is it one person, multiple people?
I can tell you that it's multiple people.
Was there security on the site? Was there lighting? Any idea of what the surroundings were?
So from my understanding, there was security. However, it's at nighttime. They got a bunch of string lights from the photos and videos I've seen, whatever lanterns people bring. I wouldn't say it was highly lit, excuse me. I wouldn't say it was well lit. I would say it was string lights and, different lanterns and things of that nature that people were using to light up the area. And it's actually really beautiful, the whole setup that they had. And they had tapestries strung along lines that kind of cordoned off certain camps. All these rainbow type tapestries and things of that nature. And so, it was dark and a lot of the areas are wooded as well. So this isn't a field.
Okay. So based upon reports, he was found hanging?
So based on the security team that we spoke to, he was hanging out of the tent. So like halfway in, halfway out the tent. And
well, I'm sorry. So you mean his body? So what was it a rope? Was it twine? Was it attached to something?
No, he wasn't hanging at all. So like imagine you've been cut and you got cuts here and you're trying to hold the cuts in and you're laying on the ground. Half the tent is unzipped, half your body's inside the tent, the other half's outside the tent.
Got it. So again,
there's no ropes or anything like that involved.
So again, when I hear hanging outside, I'm literally thinking lynching. I'm thinking like hanging.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, but that's not. Yeah, he was just halfway in, halfway out the tent, and he was found completely naked.
No video, anything along those lines?
No one had video. It was at night, but we did talk to several witnesses who stated that they heard what they thought was grunting between 2 and 4 a.m. And then they had others who stated that they heard screams, blood-curdling screams around 4 a.m. But they didn't know who it was or where it was coming from because you have, I want to say maybe almost 100 tents around, so you can't really tell what tent it was coming from. And so he wasn't found until, I think security said they arrived around 9 a.m. So he had to have been found shortly before that. And when they found him, that's how they found him, halfway hanging, halfway inside the tent. And he had lost a lot of blood. They said there was barely any blood in the tent. There was this little splatter on the back of the tent. And they said all of it was coagulated. And they had never seen anything like this. And it was later found out that he had lost almost 8 pints of blood. So then they also stated that later on, someone brought up a blood-soaked towel that was not inside his tent. So the questions are, who opened the tent? Who pulled him out the tent potentially? Who had the towel and why was it not in his tent? So when we spoke to security, it said there was no way humanly possible that he would have been able to unzip the tent, let alone crawl out of it.
Status of the investigation.
That's a great question. I don't know because we've reached out to the police. We were actually working with them originally. And they had told us initially that we have to investigate all angles. But then they said, but we really don't feel it was a suicide or a self-inflicted because if we did, we wouldn't be gathering all of his items. We wouldn't have 3 different agencies looking into this. And so, they seemed like they wanted us to work with them. They're like, oh, great, send us whatever you have. Let's kind of work together on this. And so we're like, bet, this is great. But then the detective gave us his cell number, said, hey, call this number. If we don't get back to you, keep trying. I'll get back to you. So for a couple of days, we kept trying to call him because we had evidence that we wanted to share with him. He wasn't getting back to us. So then we showed up at the station twice. The doors were not locked. They were completely open. We go in, my partner went in and he said, hey, we want to talk to the detective we were speaking to earlier, Alex Babcock. And they were like, no one's here. And so he says, well, look, I'm trying to give y'all some evidence. I need some evidence from y'all because security also told us they saw a guy outside heckling and laughing and doing all sorts of things while they were trying to administer aid to him, so much so that they threatened to arrest him several times. And then he finally jumped in his car and drove off. So we wanted to talk to police and say, who was this guy? We hear that you have a photo of his license plate. We also have evidence that we want to present. They said, we can't talk to you about that unless you bring the mom up here. So Eric says, okay, cool. We're right down the street. We'll go get her. We'll be back in 10 minutes. The hospital is 6 minutes from the police station. He drove back with me, picked her up, came. They had locked the doors. They don't close. They're open between 8 and 4 p.m. They lock their doors around 1:30, 2 o'clock.
Have y'all reached out to the state? We're talking about Michigan. You've got, about state investigators.
So we haven't yet. That's actually the next step. We had not, because when we were seeing, we had made a viral video about how the police had locked Lonn Hartman's mother out of the police station. It wasn't until we made that statement and put the police and Bliss-fest on blast that they decided to release statements almost 5 days later after the incident occurred. And they made a statement saying, oh, we thought it was self-inflicted, or it may have been an altercation that happened. We've been in touch with the family. And that's not true. They had not talked to the family. I've been with Judy and Ashley every day since Monday afternoon, every day. And they had not. The only time they talked to her, which was briefly, was when he was getting a rape kit done. And they just said, we can't answer any questions. Here's a business card. And then they called her after we made the video, and they lied and said they were speaking to the family and told her, we can't release any, it's rare that we release any evidence to family members, but you need to call this person. You had already told us that if we bring her up there, you would show her the evidence. And now you're backtracking and then telling her to call other people. And so they have not spoken. I know for a fact, I have call logs. They have not spoken to Judy or Ashley, who are the two who have been up here since he got here. So they're lying when they say they've spoken to family. Now, I don't know if they've talked to cousins, other family members. I can't speak on that. But what I do know is they're not speaking to the two people that are right down the street from them.
All right, then. Well, what is the condition of Lonn right now?
So right now, he's able to communicate. So he's blinking. He nods his head. They're trying to gauge how long it'll take for him to heal from all of this. When you lose that much blood, they don't know what, the aftermath could be, because it's all dependent on your body and how it heals from it. And so, the hopes are that they'll be able to transfer him, in a week or so to a facility closer to his home to help him with his recovery so he can keep recovering. But right now, he'll have really good days, and then, a health concern will pop up, and then it'll feel like, okay, now we're backtracking again. So it's been a lot of back and forth teeter-tottering, and, he could, it's a lot. It's a lot. And just imagine having, someone do this to you, and you wake up in a hospital and you can't move, you can't eat. People are coming in all hours of the day and night, flipping you, taking your clothes off, doing all those things. Then you got everybody trying to come in, being in your face, crying in your face, asking you questions, on top of having to deal with the trauma of someone doing this to you and surviving from it. It's a lot. It is a lot. And so he is fighting, and he's doing so, I'm so proud of him for how well he's doing, but he has a very long journey ahead of him as far as healing goes. All
right, then. Teresa Garnet, we appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
All right, folks, going to go to break. We come back. Lots for us to talk about, y'all. On today's show, I talked to New York Mayor Zohran Mamdani about his plans for black New Yorkers. We'll also we'll talk about the drama at Howard University, unenrolling more than 500 students. Some students say it was by accident. Others say, hey, they thought they had more time to pay. We'll break it all down as well. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered right here on the Black Star Network. All right, folks, let me tell you about Chapter. Now, if you're on Medicare or about to be, the system is not set up to work for you. Too much fine print, too many plans, and too many people making money off of your confusion. And look, we're used to this. We're no strangers to systems that don't have our best interests at heart. But we don't have to accept it when it comes to Medicare. That's why I'm telling you about Chapter. Their advisors are independent and honest. In fact, they're the only Medicare advisors that compare every plan nationwide. And they're focused on one thing: what works for you. If there's a better plan out there, they'll find it. If you're already in the right one, they'll tell you that too. There are no games. Just last year, people who switched with Chapter saved an average of $1,100. It's 20 minutes and a real person. It's completely free. My parents actually have already called. My mom sent me a text. Folks, give Chapter a call at 724-264-8281, 724-264-8281, and connect with someone you can trust. Folks, these are the kind of services that we need for our audience here at Roland Martin Unfiltered and the Black Star Network. So call Chapter right now, 264-8281.
Michael McMillan, President and CEO of the Urban League of Metropolitan St. Louis, and you are watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
House Democrat leader Hakeem Jeffries told reporters today that while House Republicans are failing the American people on every front, it's Democrats who are fighting to lower costs, protect health care, and hold corrupt crooks accountable.
More than 18 months into Donald Trump's presidential term, the verdict is clear. Donald Trump and House Republicans have failed the American people. Costs haven't gone down in the United States of America, costs have gone up. ICE is completely and totally out of control, spending billions of taxpayer dollars to brutalize and kill American citizens and to violently target law-abiding immigrants. The Trump tariffs have cost the American people thousands of dollars per year in additional expense. Republicans have enacted the largest cut to Medicaid in American history, and as a result, hospitals, nursing homes, and community-based health centers all across the country, particularly in rural America, are on the brink of closure. Republicans have refused to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits, putting in jeopardy the health insurance of more than 20 million Americans and causing premiums to skyrocket, in some instances, more than $1,000 in additional expense per month. Donald Trump and Republicans have launched a reckless war of choice in the Middle East that hasn't made America safer, but that has resulted in the tragic death of 18 brave service members. Hundreds more have been seriously injured, including confronting the possibility of traumatic brain injury for the rest of their lives. More than $100 billion in taxpayer money has been wasted by Donald Trump over in the Middle East, a war that he promised never to get us into. And yet, one of the main things that has changed as a result of that reckless and costly war of choice, Operation Epic Failure, is that gas prices have dramatically increased and are now north of $4.18 per gallon across the country. Donald Trump and Republicans have failed the American people, which is why they clearly are on the run and are on the verge of losing control of the House of Representatives. In many instances, Republicans have already lost control of the floor of the House of Representatives, as Democrats just demonstrated once again by successfully passing a war powers resolution. As part of our continuing effort to bring Donald Trump's reckless war of choice in the Middle East to a close, House Democrats are fighting for an affordable America. And as we return home to our districts all across the country, we will make clear to the American people that our promise to them is to lower the cost of groceries, gas, and housing. Our promise to the American people is that we will fight for affordable health care for every single American. And our promise to the American people is that we will hold the crooks accountable. If you're a crook in the United States of America and you've been stealing from the American people, we're coming after you so we can deliver a government of the people, by the people, and for the people.
Let's go to our panel, Dr. Greg Carr, Department of African American Studies at Howard University. Glad to have him on today's show. Of course, We got Dr. Larry Walker joining us from Florida. He also, of course, professor there in the Sunshine State, University of Central Florida. Glad to have y'all on today's show. All right, so let's jump right into this thing. So I guess we're going to call this Alpha Day. We'll do that. Let's do that. Larry, what you heard Congressman Jeffries say there really has to be the consistent hardcore message of candidates running in the fall. But the thing, though, is I still believe what is missing is their own contract with America. Laying out, if we get control of the House in November, these are the bills that we are going to pass.
Roland, I think that's a really important point. And we talked, you talked about the Gingrich Revolution and previously in the Contract of America those years ago, and they said, this is what we're going to do, and then they did it. Same thing we see with the Trump administration in the document created by the Heritage Foundation. This is what we're going to do, and then they have, from A to Z, done every single thing you want to do. You have to have a plan that people can read, and also how you're going to implement it, and that it's clear to the average working class American, whether you post on social media, et cetera. Talked about gas prices, talked about in a self-inflicted war in terms of, and obviously we see these things are continue to escalate over the last couple of days, but food costs. And so these have to be the issues that obviously in this press conference, that having a document and making sure you have the individuals in the party who can really articulate what has happened over the last, several months and a couple of years during the Trump administration, and why him being Speaker of the House would dramatically positively change the ways in which Americans live. People having to have choose, taking out loans, they have to choose whether they can go see a doctor or put gas in their car or buy fruits and vegetables for their children, all these other issues that Americans are dealing with. But I think that there's a problem from what future Speaker Jeffries is saying, and making sure this message gets down to the average American. Because when I talk to people, they're like, yeah, we need something to change. And if they, conversation about both parties, it doesn't feel like what's being said in D.C. for Democrats is really trickling down, and Americans, the average voter, is really hearing it. And so I think that overall there's a communication challenge here. But I agree that there has to be some kind of comprehensive document to simply say this is what we're going to do, and not just, the Republicans are bad people.
Yesterday, Greg, we had Terrence Whitbeer on, and he talked about the research that they uncovered that laid out how Gen Z doesn't really respond to saving American democracy or protecting the right to vote. And all of this stuff are critical lessons in terms of how to properly message. And that is, it all can't be Trump is evil. There's a reason why we don't call our segment Trump's War on Black America. We call it GOP War on Black America. Because we're trying to explain to people, this is not just the White House, not just the House, not just the Senate. It's these legislatures, governor mansions, county government, mayors, sheriffs, police chiefs. It's far more expansive than what people actually think. And I just think that, again, once we get into August and September, October, what people want to hear is, what are you going to do? What are you going to accomplish if I put you in the office?
Yeah, I agree, of course. And the speaker is, as you say, Dr. Walker, said there, the to-be speaker, maybe, is maybe caught between a rock and a hard place. He's got a hidebound party that he is absolutely a creature of and a product of, with those consultants, as you always say, the smart-ass white boys and the kind of folks who want to take a kind of centerpiece and whistle past the graveyard. And then at the very local level, hyper-local level, he's got people who have tapped into that passion who are working at the micro level. You're about to talk to one of the best to emerge in recent years in Zoran Mamdani. And so I think what's missing in Representative Jeffries' words there are indeed what you and Larry have said, the specifics of what you would do, if you were in power, which becomes difficult for the Democratic Party because, of course, their big tent includes some folks who will likely peel off and defect. But, and here is where I think he can make the adjustment. I was watching yesterday as they pushed through the latest giveaway, which will probably die in the Senate, of our tax dollars. And Representative Jim McGovern, Democrat of Massachusetts, I think took the position that the Democratic Party has to take now. And that is that every word that comes out of the mouth of the White Nationalist Party is a lie. And while we could check them, fact check them, and give out the litany of abuses, the simple fact of the matter is that lying is their brand. We're not trying to chase voters by demonstrating the factual inaccuracies anymore, although we must have them. What we are saying to you is that not only are they liars, the lie is the point. And what I saw Representative McGovern do yesterday is lean into the white nationalist rhetoric. And he said, so you call us communists, huh? Okay, well, fine. You want to play that game? Let's play that game. And in about 30 seconds, he went through their litany of abuses to end up with how dare they lecture anyone, because here is what they have done. Then he laid out the piece that they have done. And he didn't lean on the saving American democracy. What he said is these people are liars and they're still on both hands. And here's how they're doing it. And this is why your gas prices have gone up. This is why your food prices are going up. This is why your health care is going to go up. They're so damn insidious that they pushed your premiums escalation even further past the midterm so it can hit you at the beginning of the year. So if elected, as you say, here are the bills we're going to do, here are the bills we're going to do, here are the bills we do. But we need more. We need more than a small majority. Finally, and again, I can't wait to hear the conversation you're going to have with Mayor Mamdani. At the local level, Mamdani, while he's saying, hey, man, BB, the international killer, got to go and you should arrest him, he's also filled in thousands of potholes. While he's saying, yes, we need to transform our economic investment office. So here's a guy I'm bringing from McKinsey, and here's somebody else who used to chair the Federal Trade Commission. I want to make us work together ideologically. He's saying, pre-K, I got you. Buses, I'm working on it. Hey, he said, I'm in the pocket of Big Abuela. This guy's a genius. So as a result, I'm getting rid of all these damn regulations where you go around to the bodega and they got to go jump through 3 hoops to get. In other words, that's the kind of micro targeting. And what Representative Jeffries can do is then use the exemplars. Stop running from Zoran Mamdani. Stop whistling past the graveyard and say, look at Mayor Mamdani. Look at what soon-to-be Mayor Janice George may do in Washington, D.C. Look at the fact that we purged our party of a candidate in the Senate, for the Senate in Maine, that we had a problem with, and that the man we replaced him with is in the polls already ahead of Susan Collins, who is a liar to her core, is not a moderate, and here are the policies that she has. In other words, use your exemplars, because these young people and Democratic Socialists and everybody else have already turned away from Representative Jeffries. And your chance now is to use the exemplars of what stuff's working at the micro level and lean into it. But I'm afraid his consultants and his whole political career seem to probably trend in the other direction. He's going to keep doing what he's been doing, which is talk about the Democrats and put us in power because they failed the American people. Nobody's inspired by that.
All right, speaking of that, we will have that interview with Mayor Mamdani coming up next right here on Roland Martin Unfiltered. But before we actually go to our commercial break, folks, let me get personal for a second. My mom had questions about her Medicare. She called Chapter, a Medicare advisory company, and texted me right after saying it's a great benefit. It was easy. A real person walked her through the whole thing. And then, of course, it's not just her. Woman up in Yonkers wrote in saying the process was so simple, the enrollment was easy, and of course, and she was so glad she called. Then there's Marilyn, 90 years old, down in Florida, living on Social Security. Her premium climbed every single year, north of $400 a month for coverage she could barely afford anymore. She called Chapter, and they found her the same top-tier coverage for hundreds less. 90 years old, and finally somebody in her corner. I hear stories like that again and again from this community. The Medicare system was not built to work for you. Too much fine print, too many plans. Chapter's advisors are independent and honest, the only Medicare advisors that compare every plan nationwide, focused on one thing, what actually works for you. If you're already in the right plan, they'll tell you no games. And people who switched with Chapter save an average of $1,100 a year. 20 minutes, a real person, completely free. You can call Chapter at 724-264-8281, 724-264-8281.
With medicine and science under attack, I want to keep you and your family informed and healthy. I'm Dr. Ebony Hilton, and I knew at the age of 8 that I wanted to be a doctor. So I studied hard and became the first African-American female anesthesiologist hired at the Medical University of South Carolina since its opening in 1824. And I always say I was made into a doctor, but I was born to be a mom. And as a new mom, wife, sister, daughter, and friend, I understand how frightening a medical crisis can be. I care for individuals on some of the worst days of their lives, and it's my mission to provide you with a safe space to gain clarity on issues affecting your mind, body, and soul. I recognize that there are health disparities, particularly as it pertains to race, and I want to help bridge the gap between you and your healthcare providers. Join me every Thursday for Second Opinion on the Black Star Network, where each week I'll invite experts from various medical fields to share the latest health news. We'll discuss topics such as the vaccine debate, mental and sexual health, medical bias, infertility, menopause, andropause, nutrition, and aging. Together with my medical colleagues, we aim to provide you with a second opinion. Don't miss it, Thursdays only on the Black Star Network.
Hey, I'm Tasha Cobbs, and you are watching Roland Martin Unfiltered. But I need a little filter. I need something. Blow me out. Make me look 35.
Folks, I don't know what the hell is going on in the U.S. Virgin Islands, but it is causing a serious problem, the corruption there. The U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development has immediately suspended the Virgin Islands Housing Finance Authority from receiving federal funding. The suspension comes following a criminal conviction of the authority's former chief operating officer and years of audits that have cited financial mismanagement, inadequate fraud controls, conflicts of interest, and failures to comply with foreign aid obligations. The Virgin Islands received nearly $2 billion in federal funding to help with recovery after Hurricanes Maria and Irma in 2017. But according to HUD, improvements to housing and the electrical grid still have not taken place due to mismanagement. A number of officials in the Virgin Islands have been convicted and sent to prison for their roles in handling the disaster relief money. Former Virgin Islands Police Commissioner Ray Martinez has received a 10-year prison sentence. Former Housing Authority Chief Executive Darren Richardson sentenced to 3 years in prison. Former Office of Management and Budget Director Jennifer O'Neill, a 7-year prison sentence. And it goes on and on and on. There literally was the U.S. attorney over the area made it clear that there was going to be, more indictments coming down. Greg, I'm going to go to you. That's not, frankly, any confidence. When you have that many people, small island, that many people being convicted of corruption, and the thing, again, things not getting done. People are expecting rebuilding taking place after hurricanes there. It's not happening.
No, and it's truly unfortunate because we're talking about non-white folk. We're talking about another talking point when the propaganda campaign needs to blaze up. This has more factual accuracy than they're eating the dogs. However, the same type of racial animus will be directed at these folk, Chief Martinez and the rest. I would just say this simply. While I think we should all applaud the law doing what it needs to do, particularly when it comes to our tax dollars, this has to be done across the board. You've got, again, going back to when you think about Representative Jeffries and his speech, you've got a complete criminal enterprise not operating in the nominal shadows as they did in the first term of Donald Trump, but not only operating openly, but substituting the rule of law for their fascist statement to say, basically, we're going to do what we want. And here we just continue to do what we want. So contrasting that with the Virgin Islands, they acted too with impunity, but they tried to cover it with the status of office. They were found out, they were investigated, they were prosecuted, they were convicted. As far as I'm concerned, that then becomes a springboard to say, anyone who applauding this, and we should all be applauding, keep that same applause up when we go after the rest of the people who have violated the trust of the people by taking your tax dollars as they've done. I'm wary of any situation where we look at a case like this as if it's an isolated occurrence or somehow disconnected from the larger field of theft that we are operating under here in the United States at this moment.
This is a story here. Of course, the governor, Albert Bryant Jr., slammed HUD, calling their letter, saying he was shot, calling their letter unprofessional and also sensationalized. And at a public briefing, he said, quote, "When I go to Washington, I don't go and visit HUD or FEMA anymore because we don't have any problems." This was, of course, at a public briefing there. Larry.
Roland, this entire story is troubling because these are COVID-related funds in terms of recovery, so we should highlight that. And listen, any form of corruption is bad. It is particularly troubling when it, like as Dr. Carr highlighted, when it's your own people. And it's just saying a statement, every brother or every sister ain't a sister or brother. And this is a prime example. So we have that. But to the broader point Dr. Carr made about corruption, listen, Roland, I've been keeping a tally of the level of corruption we've seen from the current administration. I've run out of pages. So as Dr. Carr said, we're going to have this same energy for this unfortunate situation in which individuals took advantage of the system. We have to hold the larger system to the same, same expectations. And that's not happening. Look, these individuals have had their day in court. They're going to serve time as they well should. I am troubled in terms of the administration's response. In terms of what happened, we know corruption exists. Certainly, we would hope that they would find a way to make sure that, after these individuals are going to jail, the island shows that they have, competent people who are, morally upstanding in place to make sure that, citizens get the money, get the information, the money they need. If there's another, tragic event, but we're not saying that, and you give them an inch, they're going to take a yard. And this is all this does is allow them to point a finger and said, "See, I told you this is how they are."
Well, the biggest thing for me is I'm a firm believer. I despise any form of corruption because what it does is it screws the people who need the resources. The point of this point of getting this money is to improve roads, is to improve conditions. I can tell you when I was in the Virgin Islands in St. Croix, the roads were absolutely awful. I mean, they were. I mean, I won't even call what I just saw potholes. It was way bigger than that. And so again, the thing here is, money was received under a Democratic administration. All right. If you're Governor Brown, you're a Democrat. Understand with Donald Trump and Republicans in there, you're not going to get. And let's be real clear. The concerns were expressed by the Biden administration, by the Biden HUD officials. So this wasn't all just right now. The cutoff took place here. But again, this is where the resources need to get to the people who need it the most. And so I certainly hope Governor Bryan and his administration are taking this seriously and dealing with this because, again, listen, we know, we already see what these fools do, how they're giving money, FEMA money to red states and not blue states. And we're talking about right now hurricane season. Bertha landed in Louisiana, is on his way to Texas. And so when we start looking at what's going on with weather, we know for a fact that we're going to see more of these things happen. This is the storm season we're in. We're in hurricane season right now. And so I just want people to understand that listen, we may be in for a situation where more damage is on the way. And as I was saying, this right now, you've got massive. You can go to my iPad. So Bertha has a transition from Louisiana to Texas. You see these massive storms. You see that yellow and red happening in the whole Houston area. You're going to see more hurricanes forming in the Gulf of Mexico. Yes, Gulf of Mexico, in the Atlantic Ocean as well. And so this is what, and I certainly want to hope that the folks in the Virgin Islands are not going to be negatively impacted. But folks, take care of the money for the people. All right, earlier today, I take the interview with New York Mayor Zohran Mamdani, talked about a variety of issues, including Democratic Socialists for America, as well as what he is doing to keep black folks from fleeing New York City. Mayor Mamdani, glad to have you back on Roland Martin Unfiltered. It has been half a year, if you will, since mayor. How has it been thus far?
First of all, I have to say, just thank you for having me back. It's a real pleasure to be back on the show, and it's been going well. You know, it's been about 6 months, as you said, and it's been 6 months of putting our city on a path to universal childcare, saving parents more than $20,000 a year for each 2-year-old that enrolls into this program, and paving 175,000 potholes across the city at the same time. And all of this comes back from the belief that there has to be no problem too big, no task too small for city government, and whether it's childcare, potholes, restitution for workers who've been denied that by businesses that took advantage of them, or even small businesses that were taken advantage of by larger corporations, we will be there, we will be fighting back, and most importantly for New Yorkers, we will be delivering.
Talked about child care. Obviously, that appeals to a lot of parents. And the reality is that you have seen significant erosion of your black population. New York City used to have the largest black population in the country. Chicago was second, Atlanta was third. And you've been losing. What are you going to do to stem that tide? What I keep hearing from my listeners and viewers is that they simply cannot afford to stay in New York City.
Yeah, and that's what we've heard, the same thing. And we've heard it for years. And as you know, anytime we talk about increasing taxes on the wealthiest or the most profitable corporations, there'll be talk of a fear of a capital flight. But there's a real flight that's already been happening for years. And that is the flight of black New Yorkers out of the city because they can't afford the ever-increasing cost of the city. And just to put a number on it, we're talking about more than 200,000 black New Yorkers having left this city in the last few decades alone. And from 2010 to 2019, our city saw a decline in the population of black children and teenagers by 19%. So our focus here is how do we make it easier to stay in New York? Because we don't want to be an administration that presides over what has effectively become a reverse Great Migration. We want to be the administration that brings that to an end and instead says that this is a city that doesn't just celebrate Black history, but it's a city that allows Black history to keep being written. And so what we have seen is the number one cost is housing. So we have committed to building 200,000 new affordable homes, as well as preserving 200,000 existing affordable homes over the next 10 years. We're doing this while also focusing on homeowners, because we know that for many Black New Yorkers, homeownership has been that path to stability. And what that has meant is creating the city's first ever office of deed theft prevention, so we can bring an end to the scourge of especially older Black New Yorkers being taken advantage of under the guise of refinancing or planning out the shift of possession of the property to the next generation, and instead protect their rights as homeowners. And we do this as well as delivering on childcare, because when it comes to the cost of living, childcare is the second most expensive thing, and it's considered a good deal in our city today if you can get childcare for $20,000 a year, and that's just something that we can't accept.
On the point, you talked about paying for a lot of this by increasing taxes. What is going to be the burden on homeowners? Because again, you talk about those older homeowners, many of them fixed income. If you all of a sudden have an increase in property taxes, that's going to make it very difficult for those single family homeowners on fixed income.
We're not talking about any burden on a fixed income homeowner. What we're talking about is a burden on a non-resident New Yorker who owns a secondary home that's worth more than $5 million. And that is very few and far between in this city. And yet what we've seen is that a city where, as you said, a homeowner on fixed income is struggling to make ends meet, it's also the wealthiest city in the wealthiest country in the history of the world. And our job is to ensure that that wealth, it reaches the struggles also that New Yorkers are facing in affording life in this city. That's why we've been focused on increasing taxes only for the wealthiest New Yorkers, the most profitable corporations. And when it comes to those who are struggling in this city, it's how do we deliver for them each and every day. I'll give you one example. When it comes to homeowners, we saw that a Rudy Giuliani policy called the tax lien sale. The city was selling tax liens in black neighborhoods at 6 times the rate it was selling them in white neighborhoods. And I used to be a foreclosure prevention housing counselor before I was an elected official. I would see up close what it meant when that lien was sold. It meant you were on a fast track to foreclosure. So what we did, one of the first things we did was coming in, we said, look, it's not worth the amount of money this is bringing into the city if it means it's at the expense of home ownership. And so we put a pause on that lien sale for the first 6 months with a study instead to look at, yes, how can we make sure that everyone is paying what they owe the city, but also how can we make sure it's not happening at the expense of their ability to stay in this city?
One of the things that you had to deal with early on was the lack of a senior African-American leadership. How have you fixed that problem?
So I'm proud to say that we have a deputy mayor for community safety, the first ever deputy mayor in that position with Anita Francois, who is leading the work of ensuring that we have a all of government approach to public safety and understand that we don't just respond to crime, we also do the work to prevent crime. And what she's been able to do has already had tangible results, especially for young people across the city. And it's a lot of work that needs to be built on. And I think this gets back to the point that I've been sharing over the course of the campaign, which is that not only do we want a city government that is delivering for New Yorkers, we also want one that looks like New Yorkers. And so we can see that whether it's in a deputy mayor or a chancellor or commissioners all across this administration, it's a reflection of what the first Democratic Socialist Mayor David Dinkins once described the city as, which is a gorgeous mosaic.
Speaking of that, so you called David Dinkins a Democratic Socialist mayor?
Yes. He identified himself as a Democratic Socialist. He was also our first black mayor. And in many ways, he was an inspiration, not just for me, but for so many New Yorkers with his vision of what the city could be. And even just recently, I was celebrating Mandela Day, and I was looking back at images of how David Dinkins welcomed Mandela to this city and what it looked like to actually be a mayor with humanity at the core of the agenda.
So right now you have this raging debate. First of all, I don't necessarily believe that it is. I believe it is a raging debate in New York media circles as opposed to what's happening all across the country in terms of DSA candidates winning in New York, become mayor of D.C. and a couple of other places. And one of the things that I've said is that the reality is Democratic Socialism of America policies play well in very blue districts. Reality is that for Democrats nationally, especially in Congress, in order for them to, let's say, win the House, you're going to have to win in places that are purple, places that might lean red. And so how do you respond to folks who say that, oh my God, these DSA folks are taking over the party, that they're going to destroy the party, and we're not going to be able to win because we're going to get branded as socialists and communists?
Well, Democrats have been branded as socialists for longer than I can remember. I remember President Obama being called a socialist almost every single day by Republicans across this country, and it didn't stop him from delivering not just on a first term, but a second term, and things that we still talk about to this day. And I do have to push a little bit on you, Roland, on the premise around blue and red and purple, because I believe what's at the heart of this agenda is the struggle of the working person. And as much as we believe ourselves in New York to be exceptional, we also know that working people aren't just struggling in New York City, they're struggling everywhere across the country. And this message is about how can we ensure that when you work every single day, that you come home at the end of the day and you can actually afford to pay those bills for your housing, for your childcare, for your groceries. How do we reduce the distance between those two things? And here in New York City, we've talked about building more affordable housing, universal childcare, city-run grocery stores, real tangible things. I think that these have the potential to connect with any working person that's struggling anywhere. And I think for those who are concerned about what is this party, my answer would be that, what is the Democratic Party if not its voters? And what we've seen from its voters is that people are hungry for a vision of the Democratic Party that has more to do with the New Deal than with the raw deal that so many Americans have been forced to accept over these last few years.
So on that particular point there, so what do you say to Senator Chuck Schumer, Representative Hakeem Jeffries, DNC leader Ken Martin, and others in terms of messaging? Because again, when I sort of see this landscape, when I see this conversation taking place, there's a different conversation that's taking place on CNBC, on Fox News. They almost are the same than what's happening in living rooms. And so are you telling Democratic leadership, lead with policies and not labels? Because if you lead with a label, people automatically start thinking something totally different.
But what I would say is not to listen to me, but to listen to the voters themselves. Because when those voters have spoken, us listening to them is what has been the premise of us being able to deliver for them. And I think you're onto something in the focus of the agenda, not being how you describe it, but in fact, what it's delivering for people. You know, I'll tell you, as a democratic socialist, oftentimes I'm asked, what has it meant in my conversations with New Yorkers? And most often when I've knocked on a door when I was running to be mayor, people didn't ask me how I describe my politics. They just asked if there was room in my politics for them. And there was a time when we were very clear as to what this politics meant. You know, you think about freedom from fear, freedom from want, freedom of worship. These are the kinds of things, the ways that we would describe what this could mean. Today, for a lot of Americans, it feels like politics is irrelevant to their struggles. It feels like it's something that the less time they spend on it, the better that they feel. And we want politics to be something that not only a few people can afford to think about, but rather something that can deliver the many the dignity that they have long been denied.
We talked about education. We talked about charter schools. Listen, you spend a ton of money in New York City on schools. There are parents who are not happy with the education their kids are getting. And so how do you make that quick turnaround? If a parent's got a kid in 9th grade, they can't wait for a 4 or 5 year plan to finish. Their kid is gone.
I think first and foremost, you have to actually listen to parents and understand what kind of obstacles they're facing in their child receiving the world-class public education that they deserve. Too often, what we do is explain away the problem, then actually recognize it and start to plan how do we respond to it. One of the first things that I did was bring in Chancellor Kumar Samuels, who has been doing a very good job in the work of leading what is the nation's largest public school system. And one thing that truly appealed to me when I was considering him and continues to me as he has led this public school system has been his insistence on the importance of both rigor and an integrated school system. Too often what you will find is that these two words are posed as if they are somehow at odds, when in reality, they are both reflections of a functioning and successful school system. And so what our focus has been is how do we put the investments into our school system that are necessary? A lot of them, you know, you were bringing up a student in 9th grade who can't afford to wait 4 years. A lot of it has to do with how do we bring in the investment before they're in 9th grade so that we're not trying to catch up after the fact. So a lot of our work has been that $1.2 billion agreement with the governor to deliver universal childcare for 2-year-olds for the first time, to fix the system for 3-year-olds, because too many parents were saying, okay, I've got a seat, but I have to walk 2, 3, 4 miles in order to drop my child off there. How do we bring that closer to home? And then how do we also pour in the investments to ensure that children who require a specialized program, that those children and those parents are actually receiving the support that they need so their children can flourish in these educational settings? Because for a long time, what we've seen is the city's ability to provide that kind of support to children of special needs. It then pushes those families out of the public school system, and it fails in the spirit of what this system should be.
We were given 20 minutes. They're telling me we got to close by 12 minutes in. So let me ask this final question, and I'd love for you to come back. So
absolutely, we'll come back.
It's 3 months left, 3 months before the election. And I believe one of the greatest mistakes that politicians keep making, or even groups, they say, we need you to vote. Well, I can't get somebody to vote unless they're registered. I can't get them registered unless I'm really explaining to them why public policy matters and why they actually have to vote. What are you telling these candidates how they have to communicate, and how do they appeal to low propensity voters or voters who have checked out of this process? Because 90 million people did not vote in the 2024 election. Move of 5%, Kamala Harris is sitting in the Oval Office. And I just fundamentally believe, especially for African Americans, Democrats are not spending enough money, enough time, that they're using an old playbook. Your campaign, I believe, showed people how you should be running in 2025, 2026. What are you telling other Democrats nationally in terms of what they should be doing?
Well, first, I just want to say thank you for the kind words. And I think to your point, we have to stop lecturing voters as to why this election is important. And we have to start earning their interest and their support. And the quickest way to do that is by speaking to them about a political agenda that they understand as relevant to their struggles. Too often it sounds like we're putting forward a policy where a voter is spending more time trying to decide if they're eligible for that policy than whether it's going to motivate them to actually vote for that policy. And to me, I think about the early days of the Democratic Party, some of the slogans and phrases that came out of it, a chicken in every pot. These are the kinds of things where you didn't have to think and wonder what that meant and who it was for. It was a universal message as to what that politics would deliver for you. We need to be able to deliver on that kind of universalism and have it direct to the working class voters across this country who have for a long time not seen themselves in our politics.
All right, Mayor Mamdani, I certainly appreciate it. Look forward to seeing you when you come through Washington, D.C.
I look forward to it. Thank you so much.
All right, thanks a lot. All right, let's go to our panel. Greg, thoughts?
Well, that's how you do it, man. Roland, frankly, that is how you do it. You asked him about the thing that I think many folk have been talking about, which is the representation in his administration. I think that's very low on my list of priorities, but I understand. And he named, of course, the deputy mayor for community safety, Nita Francois, also Kamar Samuels, chancellor of schools. But most importantly, and by the way, just a footnote here for folks who may not know, David Dinkins was a card-carrying member of the Democratic Socialists of America. He spoke at the Socialist International meeting in 1990, shortly after being elected mayor, and he talked about public education, strong and vibrant unions, among other things. Fiordello LaGuardia was not a card-carrying member of the Democratic Socialists of America, and he ran for mayor, was elected twice as a Republican. When he ran for Congress, he ran on the socialist ticket because he couldn't get the Republican nomination. And in office, he governed like a socialist. Anybody who thinks, I don't know about socialism. Do you know about public transit? Do you know about public housing? Do you know about subsidized education, public education? All those are socialist principles. Anyway, back into the point. Mamdani is able to put things in a very, very accessible way. To evoke a chicken in every pot, puts it where, as Joe Madison said, the goats could get it. But he does it in a way that allows him to take the vitriol, the attacks, and make no mistake about it, the attacks of the White Nationalist Party against him are about one thing and one thing only: wealth. And so when you asked him about people losing their houses after he led with the deed theft policy that he is pushing, he responded with, oh yeah, none of them people, we're not going after them. That's not going to be a problem. We're going after people who got a second home and worth more than $5 million. In other words, the people we should all be looking with a left eye at. But we live in a society where Zoran Mamdani is effective by doing exactly what you asked him about and told him, which was taking the labels off. He pushed back a little bit, and I would even go so far as to say, I don't know that it was a pushback as much as it was you gave him an alley-oop and he dunked it. But here's the thing. Nobody is going to argue that you should have affordable health care and education. And by the way, the special admits this year, Bronx High School of Science, the school that Mamdani went to, for example, all public schools have an abysmal acceptance rate for Black students. Asian students, sky high. Latino students, abysmal. Black students, worse than that or tied with that. He was very upset about that, but I think that has to change. But what he said there about the not separating rigor and integration, that's chef's kiss. Because what he's saying is this person born in Uganda, whose middle name is Kwame for Kwame Nkrumah, he is saying that we must now have a society where everyone has a floor under them to be able to reach for their full human potential, but we're not judging people by how far they go in society, but by the fact that they live in the society. That is a message that only the racists and the millionaires will reject. And he's not scared of either one of those groups.
Now, let me be very, very clear, Larry. I do not give a damn about Tucker Carlson. I believe he is a fraud. I believe he is a white supremacist. But there was this conversation he had with Stephen A. Smith that in many ways he sounds like Mamdani. Listen.
This has been going on for over 60 years. I don't think it's actually helped that much. It's made people hate each other, but it's also obscuring the true crisis in the country, which has nothing to do with race and has to do with economics. And the people benefiting from the private equity scams and the crypto scams and all the other scams underway in the American economy, we don't really produce anything. We just lend money at high interest, sell real estate again and again. Those people are getting richer than everyone else, the billionaire class, and they don't want to deal with questions about how exactly this works. Why are they paying half the taxes that you're paying as a wage earner? Like, I don't really get that. And they don't want to have to defend it. So instead they're like, the real problem is race. And these whites are just bad and they've taken all the stuff. Well, actually, if you look at the numbers, that's insane. One of the biggest groups of poor people in this country is white. Are they privileged? I don't think they are. So like, it's not about race. We should treat all American citizens equally. That's the whole point of the civil rights movement. That's the whole point of the Constitution. And we're not, and we should. And then just say, look, it's not about ignoring the crimes of the past, which we should not do. We should never lie about anything. It's just about being honest about what's actually happening. And the real problems stem from the way our tax code is structured. And most people don't even think about it because no one in the media ever talks about it. It's like, really? So if I invest money, I pay half the tax rate as if I go to work? So are we saying that it's twice as virtuous to invest or to get inherited money as it is to have a job? That's what we are saying. Because we tax things we want to discourage. That's why cigarettes are expensive. So, like, are you really going to say with a straight face that you're like twice as good a person because you inherited money as I am because I go to work every day? Because that's what we're saying. Right. And so in a normal country, you just like have a revolution. People are like, I'm not putting up with this. But in our country, because every conversation is controlled by the media filter, we don't even know what's happening. And so people are like, well, my life sucks. It must be the whites, or some whites are like, it must be the blacks or whatever. It's like, this is racial foment. This is racial conflict, which is created by the people who are taking all.
All right, let's be real clear. First of all, the reason he's full of shit with all of this is because he engaged in this racial warfare when he was at Fox News. 2, it is beyond idiotic to remove race from the conversation because race is a huge part of the conversation. And yes, Tucker, poor white people do have a privilege being white. But see, that's also the problem, Larry, that I've always said with the phrase white privilege. Because when we hear privilege, we automatically think economics. Okay? That's why that phrase doesn't work because in terms of what it speaks to. But the facts don't lie. If a white male high school graduate is making more money than a black college graduate, yeah, Tucker, that's race. But the point that he's making about the economic piece, billionaire class and others, that's really what we're dealing with here. The fundamental issue in this country is that those with money want to make more money. They want to pay as less as possible. Those with money, those individuals, what they want to do is they want to sit here and say, hey, you know what? $5 billion is not enough. I really need $10 billion. Then when they get $10 billion, I really need $15 billion. In this country, we glorify wealth. We just get so excited, and we get, CNBC, Bloomberg, those are cheerleading channels because they're not actually questioning what these folks do. So what Mamdani is saying in New York, when he's saying, and he put a tweet out a couple of hours ago, saying if you own a second home worth more than $5 million in New York City, yeah, you're about to be paying more. And then the people go, oh my God, that's unfair. What the hell are you talking about? You can't even afford that.
Yeah, Roland, there's a lot of really great points here. So remember back in the day was a show, Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous, right? And people watch those shows and watch rich people jet set buy $4, $5, $10 million homes and applaud them. So let's talk about the things like the estate tax. And so you have these billionaires you highlighted who have fought tooth and nail and won with the last massive tax bill that was passed at the beginning of the Trump administration that has made them richer. And this is an example of how capitalism cannot save Black folks. And you're right, this idea as it relates to economics, that you can pull economics and racism apart, when we've seen the New York Times and other periodicals talk about the tens of thousands of college-educated Black women who are unemployed right now. So you can't pull those two pieces apart. The other thing is, I'm going to go back to the mayor's point about housing. And I know you've talked about this on a lot of the show, housing stock. And New York City it's one of the highest and toughest places to live in terms of you don't have enough income, but also this idea about affordable housing. And it's also what we're seeing here, not just recently, but over several years, in which elderly Black folks and other Black folks have had their homes stolen from them, brownstones, beautiful brownstones, stolen from them. Some have ended up homeless. You've decimated Black wealth. And I was glad to see he created this agency to address this, because this has been going on for a long time and Native New Yorkers know about this. But overall, in terms of the point you're making about this idea about wealth in like white and Black folks, is I made the point before, my parents lived during Jim Crow. So this idea that you can pull racism and economics and education apart, and it's just not part of the American deal, I would argue, and so my parents would, that that's not the case. And so we have to continue as Americans to make sure, he said, recognize what happened in the past, but we also have to connect it to how the lived experiences of people like me and other folks whose parents could not benefit from certain economic opportunities or educational opportunities, and that we're still playing from behind, while it looks and feels like, because we're having, as educated Black folks having this conversation, what more could we have if our parents didn't have the burden of dealing with systemic racism as it relates to many of the issues that continue in our society today?
Again, the people who are truly freaking out about Zohran Mamdani are the folks with a whole bunch of money. All right, we come back. We'll talk with the Black president of the American Medical Association. We'll talk to his brother about the issue of Black, white, and health, and how it has to be addressed and confronted in an anti-DEI world. You're watching Lonn Hartman Unfiltered on the Black Star Network.
With medicine and science under attack, I want to keep you and your family informed and healthy. I'm Dr. Ebony Hilton, and I knew at the age of 8 that I wanted to be a doctor. So I studied hard and became the first African-American female anesthesiologist hired at the Medical University of South Carolina since its opening in 1824. And I always say I was made into a doctor, but I was born to be a mom. And as a new mom, wife, sister, daughter, and friend, I understand how frightening a medical crisis can be. I care for individuals on some of the worst days of their lives, and it's my mission to provide you with a safe space to gain clarity on issues affecting your mind, body, and soul. I recognize that there are health disparities, particularly as it pertains to race, and I want to help bridge the gap between you and your healthcare providers. Join me every Thursday for Second Opinion on the Black Star Network, where each week I'll invite experts from various medical fields to share the latest health news. We'll discuss topics such as the vaccine debate, mental and sexual health, medical bias, infertility, menopause, andropause, nutrition, and aging. Together with my medical colleagues, we aim to provide you with a second opinion. Don't miss it, Thursdays only on the Black Star Network.
All right, folks, let me get personal for a second. My mom had questions about her Medicare, so she called Chapter, a Medicare advisory company, and she texted me right after saying it's a great benefit. It was easy. A real person walked her through the whole thing, and now she understands better what's going on. But it's not just her. A woman in Yonkers wrote in saying the process was so simple, the enrollment was easy, and she was so glad she called. Then there's Marilyn, 90 years old, in Florida, living on Social Security. Her premium climbed every single year north of $400 a month for coverage she could barely afford anymore. So what does she do? She called Chapter. They found her the same top-tier coverage for hundreds of dollars less. 90 years old, and finally somebody in her corner. I hear stories like that again and again from our community. The Medicare system was not built to work for you. Too much fine print, too many plans. Yet Chapter's advisors are independent and honest, the only Medicare advisors that compare every plan nationwide. They're focused on one thing, what actually works for you. If you're already in the right plan, they'll tell you. No games. And people who switched with Chapter saved an average of $1,100 a year. All it takes is 20 minutes. You talk to a real person, and it's completely free help. So call Chapter at 724-264-8281, 724-264-8281. That's Chapter.
Country that was never
What are we
built
doing?
for us.
We are talking about 18-year-old Nolan Wells, his family's search for answers, and the way that our own trauma is showing up in how we are reacting to the news.
Where was Nolan in the 90 minutes between when you're claiming you last saw him and when you actually left the island? Because 90 minutes is a lot of time. So where was he?
Tune in on The Other Side of Change, only on the Black Star Network.
This is Eric Dickerson, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Folks, the other day we showed you congressional testimony about the anti-DEI attacks. Also, we talked in the medical area. Did you know that less than 5% of U.S. physicians are African American? As we say, the House Education and Workforce Committee held a hearing examining medical schools and how they so-called become infected with woke ideology, and of course taking resources away, which as a result are training the next generation of doctors. Diversity is critical in the medical field, especially when you talk about for care. Dr. Willie Underwood III is the 181st president of the American Medical Association, the nation's largest medical group. He joins us right here. Doc, glad to have you on the show.
Great to be on the show, man.
Let's
be here.
Yes, sir. Let's jump right into it. All right. You know, that hearing, it is shameful and despicable when you see the right-wing attacks on medical schools, on diversity, as if, you know, we're being overrun by unqualified black folks, Latinos, and others. And what kills me is they ignore the data, which shows empirically how the disparity between how black patients are treated when they have white doctors and black doctors.
Well, there's a couple things they also leave out. The fact that inequities in healthcare in this country cost us $450 billion a year. And by 2040 is estimated to be $1 trillion, which will probably occur before 2040 because of the healthcare changes in Medicaid and in SNAP benefits and stuff like that. So that is a significant cost to this nation that we all pay, right? So when, you know, and what you hit on is this, is that we know that when you have physicians that are concordant, that means that when black patients have black physicians, and it works the same thing with Hispanics and Native Americans as well, their health outcomes are better. Newborn survival rates increase by 50%. Adherence to preventive care increases by 19%. Life expectancy increases. And if you don't mind, I want to tell you a story of how that really plays out in society and healthcare delivery. So, you know, when I was a medical student, I was in clinic, an internal medicine clinic, and a patient really collapsed in the lobby, collapsed. And they examined her and her blood pressure was extremely low. They tried to they said, you need to be admitted in the hospital. She said, no, call my family, I want to go home. And the doctors knew that she needed to be admitted. They were trying to provide her care. And they said things like, if you go home, you're going to die, A lot of stuff they said that, and she says, I don't really care, I want to go. So they said, okay, and they had her waiting in a patient's room alone. So I said, well, can I go talk to her? Now I went and talked to her. Now, interesting, when I looked at this lady, what I saw was my grandmother. And I sat back and said, well, if I was talking to my grandmother, what would I tell her? What's really important to my grandmother? And I said, what's important to my grandmother? Me. My grandmother cares about me more than she cares about everything, because telling her she's going to die, she's someone who believes in God. So I'm going to go all to my Lord to be free. So I ain't worried about dying. But when I talked to her about her family, talked to her about her grandchildren, And then I asked her, I said, which was your favorite grandchild? And then she told me, and I said, well, what's your favorite grandchild going to do? And I named her by name, when you die. And she says, what? I said, yeah, because that's what we're talking about. They're not going to have you here. So let's figure out why you don't want to be admitted. And she told me, I don't want to be experimented on. And I said, okay. She said, I don't trust the system. I said, and she gave rational reasons why. And I said, and we had our first Black surgery, our first Black internal medicine chief resident. I called him up and said, will you admit her to your service? Because I promised this woman, you will get care, that they will treat you with respect, care that you deserve. And she trusted me enough to be admitted to the hospital and get the care that she needs. That's what we're talking about.
But they simply don't understand that. And here's the thing that trips me out. You go to places like Mississippi, you go to other places, and you got poor whites who need health care. And we're seeing with the deportation efforts of the target of Haitians, what's going to happen when it comes to many of those Haitian nurses and other places as well. And so they're targeting individuals, immigrants to the country, who are providing health care to Americans and saying, no, give me an American doctor. Well, if you run the immigrants out, you're going to see an even more shortage in rural places and even in many inner city places.
So we know that we have a physician shortage in this country by about 80,000. We know that we don't have parity when it comes to the populations. That means that Blacks are 13% of the population. They should be 5% of the physicians. We know that Hispanics are now, I think, 16% of the population, but they're about 5 to 6% of the physicians. We know Native Americans are 1.3%, but they're like 0.3% of physicians. So we should have parity. And we should have a workforce that's trained well enough to be able to provide care to all our citizens so that we have a healthy, robust, productive society. Now, doing every campaign from the president to the Senate, to Congress, to the governors, to state houses, no one talks about health care and the health of our nation and how do we improve it. We don't have any debates on that. We don't have really discussion about it. So therefore, we don't know how they think when they get in there, who we're voting for when it comes to how do we create a healthcare system that works for us, not just for some of us, but for the some of us, SUM, the totality of our society. And you're absolutely correct. We have failed to do that.
What do you say, or what is the AMA's position when it comes to Medicare for all? Because that is a huge discussion in many of these political campaigns.
Well, that's an interesting question. So we believe that everyone should have access to top quality care. Everyone should have access to physicians who are able to have a team around them to provide optimal care. Okay, so now when we think about that, some people say, well, how do you achieve that? Now, if you have, so universal health care and Medicare for all are not really this, so Medicare is a potential universal health care, right? Medicare for all. And other options are potential universal health care. Now, the question is this: if we had Medicare for all today, and they decided to cut the budget like they did Medicaid, where would Medicare for all be? They took $1 trillion out of the Medicaid budget over a 10-year period. So you want a system where the government can switch at any point and decide that they're not going to fund it? What other countries are facing right now, trying to figure out how to maintain the financial structure around providing healthcare to their nation? I think what we have to do in the AMA, same thing, that we got to figure out how do we provide care to right now 360 million people, that we should create a system that's able to provide care for 500 million people, because we hope our population grows, right? And we're prepared for that.
Our panel, Greg Carr, you first.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Roland, and thank you as well, Dr. Underwood. As a son of Morehouse, as a Morehouse man, I know you understand, particularly one who was raised up under the great Hugh Gloucester. I know you understand the incredible importance of Black institutions. Any thoughts on how we can continue to widen and strengthen the pipeline to create more Black doctors so that you can have more of your colleagues do exactly what you did, which was place that elder in the hands of a person of African descent who understood that connection? I'm thinking about Morehouse School of Medicine and Howard University, and of course Meharry, which has that pipeline with Tennessee State. One of the great physicians, Levi Watkins, a Tennessee State graduate, of course, made his mark and bones at Johns Hopkins. How can we really strengthen that, particularly in a moment when these white nationalists have seemed to somehow think that anything Black is inferior? And an adjacent question to that I have, any thoughts on this cap that passed in this bill last year that caps even medical education, the way I understand it, at I think it's $50,000 a year up to $200,000 total? What effect might that have on folks trying to finance their medical education? Thank you.
Well, I'm going to answer the second question first, and that's the question that I believe I can safely answer. So that it's going to have a major impact, right? Because some students are coming out with $300,000 to $500,000 in debt. So that cap will undermine to a certain degree our ability to fund, and I mean our community's ability to fund medical school education, especially if you have undergrad debt too. So if medical school debt is $200,000 and you have 50, 60, 70, even 1,000 undergrad debt, then you will be over the cap, and that creates a financial burden. All right, then my second comment is this. So that's significant. So that's something that we ought to be trying to overturn, right? Or come up with a model, a system where we actually pay, that we can fund physicians' education that actually works. Because the idea that in this country we're paying, $200,000, $300,000, $500,000 to become a physician, while we're giving aid to the countries and nuclear weapons to countries where people get to become physicians for free, that makes no sense to me as a person. And it shouldn't make any sense to us as society. So we should be able to fund medical school education in general, education that we believe that's good for the society. From the other aspect, as speaking, you mentioned Morehouse, you mentioned Levi Watkins and Tennessee State and these things. Listen, we've been here before, right? We've been here before. This is, we know the history. So we have to create what we need to create, regardless of where we are in the times that we're in, right? Again, my story is that 4 women sat in the room and said, we need a doctor, a lawyer in your family because it's going to be the lawyer. There was no idea of how that was going to happen, right? I mean, back then teachers were telling me I was too stupid to be anything, right? So they didn't say, well, here's the reality that we're in. Everybody thinks you're stupid, but they said, no, we're going to make this happen. So let's do that. Let's do that. That has to be our who we are. Let's go back. I'm not saying go back because we haven't. We're in where we are, and we've always been in where we are. So we just have to continue to move forward. Now, we have to say education is extremely important, and period. And we have to identify the needs of our community and educate our children to fulfill those needs, period.
Yes.
Larry?
Yeah, so thank you for appearing. This is a really important discussion. I want to talk about, someone who's already in higher ed, in my experiences with these DEI, this at the state and federal level, these attacks, particularly when it comes to training future physicians, and then go a little further, the pregnancy-related death rate between Black women and white women. And I'm wondering, what impact this will have on, having these discussions about racism in, doing a medical school, particularly when it comes to issues relating like pain, the research on pain tolerance in terms of these stereotypes that some physicians have that Black people can deal with more pain compared to other groups. And like I said, as it relates to these pregnancy, disproportionate rates in which Black women die from pregnancy-related deaths, regardless of socioeconomic status, and you could talk about that.
Well, so I'm going to hit the pain thing first. The pain part is quite interesting. On one end, we believe there's thoughts that Black people have different pain tolerance. And then on the other end, when Black people complain about pain, they think that they're drug seeking, right? So that's a problem. So when you try to say, well, how do we educate people differently to change these sort of stereotypic thoughts, we have to be open to that. And again, the context of that discussion is that when we get it wrong, it adds to the cost for all of us. That's where the $450 billion a year comes to. Now, what is that? That's more than the cost of what smoking does to our healthcare system and cardiovascular disease. That's a significant amount of money. So I think we have to talk about it in that way, not just the fact that, yes, 86,000, look at David Satcher's work, 86,000 additional deaths occur in the Black community because of care not being delivered the same, okay, right? 86,000 additional deaths, that's 860,000 people over a 10-year period. All right, so there's gonna have significant issues at multiple levels when we talk about these things, every aspect that we're talking about. And we know that Black women and poor women, right, but Black women die disproportionately in childbirth, and we're going to get it wrong. And if we continue to get it wrong, it's going to be bad for our society.
We certainly appreciate it. Glad you could join us. Love to have you back on the show. This is the issue that we're always talking about. We launched, of course, our show, Second Opinion, with Dr. Ebony Jade Hilton, our weekly show that deals with health issues because we know how critically important that is to our community.
Hey, thank you very much. It was great to be here, and I look forward to coming again, and I hope to see you at the NABJ. All right.
Absolutely. I will. Well, I'm Vice President Digital, so I kind of got to be there. So I'll be there.
All right. When I walk up to you, Rose, don't act like you don't know me now.
Huh?
When I walk up to you and say hello, don't act like you never seen me before.
Oh, yeah, I will. I appreciate it. Thanks a lot. All right.
Peace, man.
We got to go to a break. We come back. We're going to talk about a lawsuit. JPMorgan Chase hit a lawsuit saying, you know what, their Black Advancing Pathways program really ain't what they all made it out to be. We'll also talk about the debacle at Howard University over the issue of their incoming students. A lot to break down. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered right here on the Black Star Network. Support the work that we do. Join our Bring the Funk fan club. You want to contribute via Cash App. Use the Stripe QR code. You see it right here on the screen. All that's also for credit cards. If you're listening, go to blackstarnetwork.com for details on how to give. Check your money order. Make it payable to Roland Martin Unfiltered. P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 2037 at 0196. PayPal R Martin Unfiltered, Venmo RM Unfiltered, Zelle Roland at RolandSMartin.com, Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Be right back.
With medicine and science under attack, I want to keep you and your family informed and healthy. I'm Dr. Ebony Hilton, and I knew at the age of 8 that I wanted to be a doctor. So I studied hard and became the first African-American female anesthesiologist hired at the Medical University of South Carolina since its opening in 1824. And I always say I was made into a doctor, but I was born to be a mom. And as a new mom, wife, sister, daughter, and friend, I understand how frightening a medical crisis can be. I care for individuals on some of the worst days of their lives, and it's my mission to provide you with a safe space to gain clarity on issues affecting your mind, body, and soul. I recognize that there are health disparities, particularly as it pertains to race, and I want to help bridge the gap between you and your healthcare providers. Join me every Thursday for Second Opinion on the Black Star Network, where each week I'll invite experts from various medical fields to share the latest health news. We'll discuss topics such as the vaccine debate, mental and sexual health, medical bias, infertility, menopause, andropause, nutrition, and aging. Together with my medical colleagues, we aim to provide you with a second opinion. Don't miss it, Thursdays only on the Black Star Network.
Hey, I'm Malcolm Lee, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Following deaths of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor in 2020, corporate America made all sorts of vows, including JPMorgan Chase. Chase vowed to be a leader in closing the racial wealth gap. The bank pledged $30 billion in lending and financial support for black business owners. But now, one of the executives who helped lead those efforts has filed an explosive lawsuit in which she claims the bank actually decreased support for black entrepreneurs. In a 49-page lawsuit filed this week, former JPMorgan Chase Vice President Rashida Winfrey alleges her former workplace is full of racial bias and gender harassment. Among her allegations is that JPMorgan executives disparaged black business owners, including Ryan Wilson, owner of the Gathering Spot, as radicals who were unable to be helped because they did not pay their bills. Well, joining us now to discuss the lawsuit is Rashida Winfrey, as well as her attorney, Tanvir Rahman, a partner with Filipados? I don't know the pronouncement.
It's Filipados.
Filipados law firm. Glad to have y'all here. Okay, so Rashida, you work for Chase. Where were you based? Atlanta, New York? Where were you based?
So I was hired by a New York team and initially reported in to New York. My work spanned the entire country, but I was hired, I sat in Atlanta, but my work, was all over. We had leads. A lot of the work was actually during COVID. So, we really were just working across the entire country. I was the fourth person hired on what ended up being, I think, like a 70-person team or something like that. So we worked all over the country.
I remember when the announcement was made, there were commercials that they were running on the air, the advancing pathways I remember seeing. They were sponsoring various things. There were posts on LinkedIn and on social media. I know several people who actually work, people I've come across as well. But you lay out that they really weren't advancing black business.
No, not at all. And what you just said, Roland, is actually how I ended up in my role. Chase came looking for me. I was gainfully employed, and I had, worked in somewhat of a partnership, or worked on a partnership with JPMorgan Chase. And they had just made this announcement about a bold $30 billion commitment to help close the racial wealth gap. And so when Chase came calling, that was right up my alley. I was, raised between two cities that are parts of the cradle of the civil rights movement. I was raised between Southwest Atlanta and Selma, Alabama. So I was raised by, foot soldiers of Selma, Alabama. But my career had always been in finance in banking. And so when Chase said, hey, $30 billion, we are going to help solve some of the, ills and, impacts that our communities have seen, especially during COVID. I was excited. I jumped at the opportunity. So that is exactly how I ended up at JPMorgan Chase.
And looking at the allegations in here, you talk about, you lay out your role in joining them, places that you worked as well, but the sexual harassment you endured, and the treatment of black businesses. When you specifically talk about what JPMorgan Chase officials said about Ryan and the Gathering Spot, and they were they were upset with criticisms that he had leveraged against him, and so therefore they made those comments?
So the interesting thing is, I wouldn't even call them criticisms. Ryan, as an educated, I think he has a law background, it was just natural for him to ask questions. And so he had questions about kind of the results of the
racial equity commitment, this $30 billion commitment. And simply because he had questions and wanted some clarification, he wanted to know how to better support his community members, right? The Gathering Spot is all about community and kind of, lifting members, rise together. So I wouldn't say he was complaining. It wasn't upset. It was basic questions that anyone with, half a brain would ask. And for whatever reason, that was just especially upsetting to Chase, leadership. In hindsight, I know now that it was probably because there were no real results for them to share with, with Ryan Wilson. But yeah, they began to call him radical. At the time, his business was, kind of going through some transition. And, he even inquired about himself receiving, this part of this magnanimous, dollars that were being poured into the community that Chase spoke of. And, the message we got internally was don't touch him, don't go there. All of those things. I, again, being raised by foot soldiers, Selma, Alabama, that's not something I abided by. And more than that, internally, I really started to push back on that narrative because it was literally, kind of making its way through the organization. And I thought it was such an unfair characterization. I know Ryan generally, I know his reputation, I know his father's reputation. And, it was something I didn't take kindly to. But that was one of kind of just many examples of things that happened internally that were absolutely, converse to what we were saying publicly. Our marketing, our marketing headlines, essentially. It's hard to even come up with the word for what they were because they were rarely ever true. So yes, they started calling him a radical and would not even allow him to apply for lending. They discouraged him from applying for lending, which is against Fair Lending Act.
Tanvir, the lawsuit says that regarding the loans, they provided less lending to minorities after its public commitment than before. The stated lending commitment was to provide an incremental $2 billion in 15,000 loans to business in majority Black and Hispanic Latino neighbor communities over and above the 2019 baseline of $1.35 billion in such loans. However, instead of an incremental positive $2 billion change, by December 2022, the amount of loans provided by JPMC to these minority communities was lower than the 2019 baseline. In 2022, the overall total loans to minorities have been reduced by $1.18 billion from what it was in 2019, which was before the REC was even announced. The results were so paltry that any mention of business loans was hidden from JPMC's website, touting the racial equity commitment's progress. This is obviously a sharp contrast in watching Jamie Dimon go out there defending DEI and things along those lines.
An allegation in our complaint where Mr. Dimon was in Atlanta, he was attending really lavish dinner with donors and high executives, while at the same time, and actually this dinner was being held in a former plantation, in contrast to effort to sort of market bank as providing these resources to the inner city, right? At the same time, you're having the CEO, again, project this image. Hey, we're powerful. We're gonna throw this plantation, which is incredible. So it was this sort of attitude of we're on one hand we're sort of helping them, but not really. We're gonna sort of a little paternalistic, patronizing type attitude towards minorities. Again, from our perspective, the bank took advantage of what was going on at the world at that time. Again, the tragic murder of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor. Took the opportunity, like many other companies did at this time, to use that and to fit their own narrative. Hey, look, we are here for minorities. We're here to bring equality, to bring justice. It's lip service. Right? Give it a few months. Give it. Saw this. By the time by 2022, 2023, they're backing away from what they literally promised. So it's really shameful, but not surprising. From these corporations are say on the one hand what they do behind closed doors.
Rashida, I want to play for you. This was an interview with Jamie Dimon and Axios where DEI came up.
And their families, and then their families for generations almost. And so it's hard to subject your family to that. And anyone who does it, I applaud, but it's hard.
Democrats are less popular than the war, less popular than ICE after these raids and shootings in Minneapolis. Like, if there were a stock, you'd probably short them. Like, what happened?
I think they just got too far to the left and too anti-business and too lack of common sense. I mean, when I look at things like a lot of, is climate a real issue? Yeah, it is. Did we do a lot of stuff that was intensely stupid? We did. And people know that. Did we overdo DEI in a lot of cases? Yeah, we did. And people know that. We look at, do people believe that Washington is not a swamp? Like, who on this show thinks if we give Washington another $1 trillion that it would be well spent as opposed to go out to their own special interest groups? The inefficiency they see in the system is extraordinary. And, the litigation.
All right. So, Rashida, you heard him say he probably overdid DEI. And here's this huge announcement, comes in 2020, and you're saying, hell, not even 2 years in, they're stepping back.
It became early on clear to some of us who were early hires that that the mission that we thought we were hired to do just was not there. So where I think many people were shocked by the time that this interview came out, a lot of us internally were not. It never seemed that there was a true commitment. And it definitely seemed, especially when there was a change, in the presidency, that it gave permission to just say what people have been thinking, leadership have been thinking and really doing all along. And so that made television, right? That made an interview that we all got to see. I think he ended up having to walk a little bit of that back, even though that was the truth, right? That was speaking of the truth. But we had leaders internally that were also saying things like, why do these Black people feel like we owe them something? And that happened on a call that I was on. And of course, I pushed back. My reminder was, I said, well, maybe they think that they're owed something because we made a public commitment for $30 billion to go toward access and resources to support them. When I saw that, I was shocked that it actually came out. I wasn't shocked that that's what the belief was.
It obviously takes a lot to make a decision to file a lawsuit. Tanvir, what is your goal?
My goal is to justice for Rashida. She is a very brave woman. Forward, even before she spoke to us, she had already gone to human resources, to her managers, to complain about what she was experiencing. There's rampant harassment. So she's very courageous coming forward in the first instance. But no, we filed her lawsuit. We're in court right now. We're in Southern District of New York in Manhattan. JPMorgan's trying to transfer the case, down to Georgia, which we're opposing. They have their own motives for doing that, but we're opposing that motion. Hopefully, the judge decides that quickly and we can move forward and file. So, no, we're going to fight. We're confident in Rashida, confident in our claims. JPMorgan accountable.
Rashida, the last one here. I want to read this one here. This is interesting because I remember. This was after 2021. I remember having a meeting with JPMorgan Chase in New York in their ad agency, and even communicating with the chief world global officer of JPMorgan Chase as well. So this is the one that really got me. In another instance in June 2021, Ms. Winfrey openly clashed with the company's non-black marketing team when it suggested a promotional campaign for a virtual Juneteenth event with many team members being in New York. The marketing team wanted to promote the event by juxtaposing how slaves helped each other along the Underground Railroad with how JPMC was guiding black entrepreneurs to help each other through better networking. Ms. Winfrey complained that this strategy was deeply offensive, a sentiment shared by many others outside JPMC, including Natalie Cofield, whom President Biden appointed as the national head of women's business for the Small Business Administration. Ms. Winfrey had invited Ms. Cofield to participate in a panel discussion during the Juneteenth event. However, JPMC required Ms. Cofield, a black woman, to practice for her appearance, but did not require the same for Mark Morial, the president of the National Urban League, ultimately due to her disagreement with JPMC's Juneteenth marketing strategy of tying slavery to entrepreneurship, coupled with the disparate treatment she experienced in being mandated to practice for her appearance on the panel. Ms. Cofield declined to participate in the event. Wow.
Shocked. I mean, shocked. I do want to clarify that Ms. Cofield's biggest frustration was just generally being able to see behind the curtains of what our culture looked like and felt like behind the scenes. Most people, including me, again, you're attracted and you have this thought that it's one of the most well-respected, but I think the biggest challenge was when you pull back that veil and you're able to see. But yes, our marketing team actually said and put in writing that for Juneteenth, that the strategy would be that we would connect for small business owners, how business owners now network in the same way that slaves networked in order to get through the Underground Railroad. And when I pushed back on that and suggested that that would be not only offensive, but confusing, but not make any sense, at all. Of course, then the challenge was me and not the ridiculousness of comparing slavery and the Underground Railroad to those things that just fit the narrative of our $30 billion commitment that truly wasn't. I was appalled. I remain appalled. And I have to say, I'm getting heart palpitations because this entire conversation takes me back to the pain and the trauma of working during this experience. I was a highly credentialed woman who was actually recruited to come to this. And, to then get there and it come to all of this, I mean, who could ever imagine that these are the things that would be happening and being said about a community that we publicly were saying we were supporting? So that is one of the most shocking things to me also, Roland.
Tavir, what are y'all seeking in damages?
That's to be determined. There's categories of damages that we can obtain. There's a back pay. There's emotional distress. There's punitive damages, attorney's fees. So we're gonna seek the full panoply. Ms. Winfrey has been damaged. She was terminated ultimately, for bogus reasons. After, again, she complained, further about what she was experiencing. And yeah, she's had to move. She had to take another job at a inferior position, and so her life has been upended. She had to do the right thing, stood up, for what was right, herself, and this is what she was rewarded with, termination, and now she's in the aftermath. So, again, we look to hold Chase accountable to the full extent of the law.
All right, then. Well, we appreciate both of y'all for joining us to discuss this lawsuit.
Thank you, Roland.
Thank you for having us.
I'm going to go to Greg and Larry before I go to our Howard story. You know what, Greg, the reality is, we called it right here in this show. We made it clear to people. You got to keep your foot on their necks. These companies made all of these multi-billion-dollar commitments. They were gonna fall back on those commitments. JPMorgan Chase started rolling back their advancing pathways in 2025. Didn't even last 5 years. It goes to show you, in terms of history repeats itself. This sounds like exactly how white folks operated after Reconstruction or during Reconstruction.
It does, Roland. It's complicated, brother. It's funny you mentioned Reconstruction because it makes me think about the Civil Rights Act of 1866, of course, and then the law that eventually found itself codified in places like 1981, Section 1981. And of course, as you read the same complaint that we did, she has Title VII claim there under Section 1981. She's also, filed with the EEOC. I don't know how that's going to work out, particularly given this administration. But when I say it's complicated, race isn't enough. Racial solidarity isn't enough. Representation isn't enough because three of the major characters in this drama, three of the major people in that complaint are Black men. And, I suspected it when I looked at how she has been harassed, the texts, the salacious kind of sexual innuendo trait. And then when I looked them up, I was like, damn. I remember maybe about 15 years ago, I had a student over at Howard Law School who wrote a paper on Title VII and how Title VII cases become more complicated when everybody involved is Black. You exposed Jamie Dimon, of course, and he's been doing that for a long time. He's come to Howard. I seen she spoke at Charter Day. I'm sitting in my academic regalia laughing, like, really, this is what we're doing right now? Those Africans that built Wall Street in Manhattan, as in Chase Manhattan, and the literal octagon that you have as your symbol is a cut section of a water pipe. That's some of the work those captive Africans did. You're going to talk about that while these Negroes are standing here clapping. It reminds me of what Hosea Williams told James Baldwin in Atlanta when he said, this is not what Dr. King was fighting for some Negroes to get up into these suites and then have a class division against the rest of us. In reading the complaint, Sister Winfrey has been harmed. And she, I think, will be compensated. I think that Mr. Rahman and his firm will be able to do that. I'm thinking, like you always think, Roland, I think we all do, about the structural reforms and what happens, how do we hold ourselves responsible in a community when her Title VII claim, her sexual discrimination claim, involves more Black men who worked in there with JPMorgan than anything else. In our community, how do we address the question of responsibility when we do fight to get people in those positions and some of them Negroes turn around and behave just like white men? Brother, that complaint, man, I'm just sitting there shaking my head and because how many times have we seen that, Roland? How many times have you seen it? We fight to get somebody in the room and then they turn around and act like the people who we were fighting to get them in the room. It's a difficult situation.
See, I remember vividly, Larry, when they announced their advancing Black pathways. In fact, I'm looking here to see. So this is the actual press release. It's still up on their website. I didn't see a date on here. I'll try to, it lays out grows existing firm efforts to expand. Entrepreneurs of Color Fund expands to Greater Washington area. You see this here. Making the economy work for more people is not only a moral obligation, it's a business imperative. This is, they're quoting Thasanda Duckett, CEO. This is when she was with JPMorgan Chase's Consumer Bank. She's now over CEO of another company. Strengthen education and job training, grow careers, build wealth, fellowship initiative, all this stuff. And so it's real simple. It ain't hard. Did you meet your commitment? Did you increase loans or did they decrease? And the issue that I have with initiatives like this, and I'm always paying attention to this, Larry, is are they real or are they performative? And see, this is the thing that I need Black people, Black organizations to stop doing. I need Black organizations, when these initiatives roll out, and I'm talking about a series of Black organizations, I'm talking about civil rights groups. I'm talking about advertising groups. I'm talking about all sorts of groups. We gotta stop thinking that when somebody comes and presents a sponsorship check, we should be handing them an award for being a community partner. And see, I'm always about check the numbers, check the data. I have said this to the NAACP, to the National Urban League, to Rainbow Push. I've said it to NAN. I've said it to Ad Color. I've said it to numerous groups. Stop letting people hand us a crumb because they bought a table or sponsored a workshop or sponsored a convention, and we're getting left out of billions and billions of dollars of capital.
Yeah, Roland, there's some really hard questions that really no one wants to ask. They really don't want to ask these questions. They really don't have the answers. You had some really important points as it relates to like a sponsorship. We see this all the time in the Black community, with, large banks like this, whether it's like a Black History Month or Juneteenth or, something else related, to Blackness in America. And they sponsor these events and maybe annually for 10, 15, 20 years. But it's small numbers as you highlighted. And this is a much larger issue with Chase and banking in America in terms of, we talked earlier about systemic racism. Chase is not the first time they've been called on the carpet as it relates to their policies. This is a little bit of pulling back the curtain, and we get this, and someone who was there internally to unpack some of the challenges that are occurring and the contradiction in terms of what the marketing team is doing in terms of publicly, but what they're doing internally or the lack thereof of their commitment to making sure that Black communities get an equal share of the pie. In fact, more, considering the challenges we mentioned. We talked about Jim Crow and everything else and historically in the United States. And then the larger issue of housing, job training, et cetera, that Black people have been locked out of and continue to be locked out of. And then the role switch in terms of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and some of the other things that some of these organizations did during COVID, talked about we commit to the Black community, and then their role switch because of politics. And this speaks to commitment to the cause and the moral commitment to making sure that Black people have the opportunity to do well in this country and buy homes, have small, larger businesses, and not simply live, but our communities thrive. And this proves, once again, pulling the curtain back, that not only this Rashid had to deal with misogyny in terms of racism and racism and gender, how it intersects, but also larger questions about the true commitment of the bank to making sure Black people are treated equally.
And last thing before I go to a quick break, so we discuss the Howard University story. I also need Black people who helped put their name in the press release to be held accountable and hold JPMorgan accountable. This is the press release. JPMorgan Chase said, leveraging expertise, Sekou Kalon will lead advancing Black pathways, reporting to executive sponsor Basunda Duckett. She later left to become CEO of another company. JPMorgan Chase has also established an external advisory council to offer unique expertise and inform ABP's approach to driving inclusive growth in communities. The council consists of the following civic and business leaders: James Bale, board director at JPMorgan Chase, Dow Chemical, Chicago Urban League, World Business Chicago, and Apple. Maverick Carter, business manager for LeBron James and CEO of Spring Hill Entertainment and Uninterrupted. Richelieu Dennis, founder of Sundial Brands, Essence Ventures, and owner of Essence Communications. Kevin Hart, actor, comedian, and CEO of Heartbeat LOL Network. Melody Hobson, president of Ariel Investments, head of the Economic Club of Chicago, and board director at JPMorgan Chase, Starbucks, and Estee Lauder. Andre Hoffman, founder and CEO of Culture Shift Labs. Mark Morial, CEO of the National Urban League and former mayor of New Orleans. Soledad O'Brien, chairwoman of Starfish Media Group and broadcast journalist. Secretary Colin Powell, former U.S. Secretary of State and U.S. Army General. James Reed, Ashley Stewart, CEO, founder and president of Firepine Group. Secretary Condoleezza Rice, former U.S. Secretary of State, former National Security Advisor, and professor at Stanford Graduate School of Business. Michael Sorrell, president of Paul Quinn College. Now, first of all, Secretary Powell, he's deceased. Everybody else on here is still here. They should be saying to us, did Advancing Pathways meet their commitments? It's called accountability. I'll be right back.
This week on the other side of change.
Black life, Black death, in a country that was never built for us.
We are talking about 18-year-old Nolan Wells, his family's search for answers, and the way that our own trauma is showing up in how we are reacting to the news.
Where was Nolan in the 90 minutes between when you're claiming you last saw him and when you actually left the island? Because 90 minutes is a lot of time. So where was he?
Tune in on The Other Side of Change, only on the Black Star Network.
I'm Swing Cash, Basketball Hall of Famer, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Folks, social media blew up last night and today when hundreds of Howard University's incoming freshmen say they have been disenrolled just weeks before they were supposed to move in. On Wednesday, emails like this were sent to students who had not paid at least 50% of their balance by saying July 10th, saying they could no longer hold a spot for them in the incoming class for fall 2026. Multiple students said they were waiting for grants, scholarships, and federal funding to clear their balance. They were not aware that if the funds were not applied by July 10th, they would be unenrolled. Howard alums, students, and parents are enraged by the university's decision and are speaking out against it. First of all, let's show the statement from Howard University, please. They put it on social media. They released a statement making it clear we understand that the enrollment update that was issued yesterday is difficult and disappointing for students and their families. Howard University provided multiple detailed communications throughout March, April, May, June, and July to first-time in-college students and families on steps needed to secure enrollment for the fall 2026 semester. Notifications included emails, personalized financial aid information, videos, and Bison prep sessions to help incoming students understand the tuition payment requirements, payment plan options, the process for reporting outside scholarships, and the deadlines necessary to secure their enrollment. Joining us it says students who did not meet the established payment arrangement, or scholarship and other financial aid reporting deadlines have been notified that the university can no longer hold their place in the incoming class. Incoming freshman Isabella Williams received a disenrollment email after expecting her scholarship to fulfill financial requirements. Isabella posted this video in response to the disappointing news.
I don't like being emotional. I don't like showing any sort of fear. But never in my life have I been so disappointed. Never in my life have I gotten so far and worked so hard for it to be stripped from me on a random Wednesday, when I was promised and told by people that what I was doing was okay, that everything was fine, and that my scholarships could come through later. And then I'm suddenly unenrolled from a dream school, from a school that I worked so hard to get into, to afford to go to, because my mother wasn't able to continue her education there for the same reason. This is unacceptable. I'm not accepting this. As I put in my notes, still we rise. Please be kind. Please be kind to me. Please be kind to the students going through this. Please be kind to yourself. If you're currently a student, or if you're an incoming one, or you were supposed to be an incoming one, things work out. Things will work out. I promise they will. But that doesn't mean it's not hard. But I'm hoping that I can get through this. And I hope that this can be motivation to everyone and anyone that bad things can happen and we will still rise. And the sun will come up the next day. And I'll still be able to help people the way that I want to. Because nothing will stand in the way of my light, even if it feels like it is. I love you all. I love you all very much.
Folks, there are a number of videos like that with incoming first-year students now left to their own devices. Organizations like the Esther Funds Foundation are now trying to step in and support. They posted a statement offering aid to the incoming Howard freshmen, sharing that the Esther Funds Foundation stands with Howard University students facing sudden enrollment uncertainty. We recognize how frightening and destabilizing this moment can be, and this is exactly why EFF exists, to help students navigate financial emergencies, resource gaps, and barriers that threaten their path to graduation. Affected students may email nationals@estherfundsinc.org with the subject Howard Student Support, and include a brief summary, the deadline they are facing, and a redacted screenshot when helpful. They ask, please do not email social security numbers, passwords, verification codes, tax returns, or full financial account details. Isabella Williams and Laverne Mickens, a parent widely known for providing college funding resources, known as the Scholarship College Mama on social media, join us right now. So, Isabella, I'll start with you. Howard said notifications were sent over a period of months. Did you receive those?
Received those emails, and I directly contacted financial office to ensure that I was good to go. I talked to them about my personal situation. I told them that I have external scholarships that will cover the remainder of my balance, which is $12,000, and they said it was okay. I submitted it through Backpack. I gave them all of my needed documentation, and they said I was fine. So I didn't enroll in a payment plan because I was told not to. We understand that we were given emails, but we also know that we directly communicated with Howard University. So what they're saying to the press versus what they're saying to us is entirely different.
Okay, when you say you talked to them, they assured you. Did you detail who you talked to? Were they an authority? Was it a student? Was it the financial aid director? Who did you actually talk to?
I called multiple times. I think sometimes they were students and other times they may have been a regular adult employee, but I will say that they don't specify who it is. They just say that it's financial aid office. And to be quite frank, it takes so long to get on the phone with anyone that the last thing I'm thinking about is the title of who I'm talking to. I'm just happy I have someone to talk to.
No, I understand that. What I'm saying is when you were calling, you got these assurances. Were you noting the name and the title of the person you were talking to, so anything happened later, you can follow up and say, no, Pam so-and-so or David so-and-so on this date told me this?
Well, no, because like I just stated, we should be able to trust our university. We should be able to call our university, ask a question, get it answered, and not have to give it a second thought. I understand that some people will say, well, their reputation will precede you and you should have assumed otherwise. But I believe that it's okay for students to have trust in their university, and we should be able to. So to answer your question, no, but I genuinely did not think that I had to.
Laverne, some students were inadvertently removed, and our understanding that they've been added back. Any idea of actually, we've heard hundreds, we've heard 500. Any idea of how many students have actually been impacted at Howard?
Hi, Roland. Thank you for having me on tonight. I'll tell you this, between 3 and 5 p.m. last evening, I got hundreds of emails and direct messages, and I was up until 4 o'clock this morning answering at least 300 to 400 emails. So I would have to say several hundred families were impacted. Some are saying 500. Some people are saying more. And as to your question of people being reinstated, I did speak to a couple families that were veterans that were waiting on the GI Bill and other veterans benefits. I know they got priority, and someone from Veterans Affairs reached out to the college and got their particular situation straightened out. So I know some of the students that were re-enrolled were families of veterans with veteran benefits and the GI Bill and things of that nature. But several hundred, if not 5 or 6 or more, I know students that had full rides that got kicked out of school last night. I know Jackie Robinson, Bill Gates scholars, Coca-Cola, kids with full tuition and full ride scholarships that were either told that they didn't need to get on a payment plan, or they tried to get on a payment plan and there was a glitch to the system. They spoke to the director of financial aid. They also spoke to a woman named Mrs. Frazier. They spoke to several people who gave them several different conflicting messages. And so I just made a video last week about how we need to be more clear with parents and families and students about this entire process. And I would see if it were 10 or 20 or maybe 50 or 100 families, they missed a deadline, but 500 to 600 families missing a deadline and blaming the families and saying, well, they got an email on July 8th or June 8th. July 10th was a deadline they should have known. All of these families were told several different things, and they've got screenshots, documentation, emails. They've got proof. So
we wanted someone from Howard University to come on the show to explain what happened. They did not provide anyone. They simply sent us that particular statement. Obviously, this is a lot of people are distraught. Like I say, I've seen numerous videos like that of Isabella. Isabella, since this happened, again, there's been a huge response. Have you heard from anyone with the university today regarding your status?
No, I haven't heard anything directly from the university. I called the financial aid office, I called the bursar office, and I left messages for both of them, but I have received nothing in return. I've also emailed enrollment engagement like we were expected to do, and I got nothing in return. Luckily, I'm one of the students that has gotten their classes back, but I now have a $30,000 bill, and they haven't said whether I'm actually reinstated. So right now, even though I have a little bit of hope, there's still no transparency, there's no communication, and there's a bill that a lot of us have that we cannot afford to pay.
Laverne, when we talk about, look, cost of education is insane these days. And if we talk about, what it costs to go to Howard University, I've talked to some folks, we're talking, upwards of $50,000. And in fact, this is from Howard University's own website that lists various cost estimate, indirect. It says that the total cost estimate you're talking about could be some $64,000 annually. And I can only imagine, you listed Jackie Robinson scholars, Bill Gates scholars, and others. I can only imagine if you're a family and you are expecting a scholarship that's going to pay for all of that, and a scholarship hasn't arrived. So what the university is saying is, no, you as a family, you actually have to make up that $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 shortfall. Is that what they're saying here?
With that. That's what Howard is saying, but as a parent of 5 children I've put through college, this is how scholarships work, right? So scholarships are usually paid out in August, September the latest, and the colleges know this. So, for example, in my situation with my kids, I'll get, or my daughter will get, an email from the scholarship. We're going to cut the check like Scholarship America says and does. We'll send it to you with the college's name. You send it to them. I forward that email to the director of financial aid. They put a note in her account and they credit her the amount of the scholarship because they know the money's on the way. They never tell me, well, Mrs. Mickens, we know you won the scholarship, but you've got to swipe your card and pay this money. What they will say is you need to have possibly a zero balance either before you step foot on campus or before classes start. But scholarships usually pay out in August and September, especially big national well-known scholarships that are $20, $30, $40, $50,000, which a lot of these kids won these scholarships. Howard is not new. How old is Howard University? They've been taking these students with these scholarships for how many years? They know how this works. They know how scholarships work. They know how grants work. They even know how loan disbursements work. And even with the big, beautiful bill and the changes on July 1st to Parent Plus loans, direct subsidized, unsubsidized loans, Pell Grants, SEOG grants, and all of that, even with those changes, the amount of money that will be dispersed at a certain time, they're supposed to communicate with the parents. They're supposed to communicate with the student. I think what happened is students turn 18 and what happens? We've got FERPA laws. They are talking only to the students because according to them, the student is the adult. And they send all those emails to their howard.edu email, which by the way, they've been kicked out of school. They don't even have access to that email anymore. They're not communicating with the parents. I don't know if the student is communicating with the parent. There's just miscommunication all around. So like I said, I know kids with scholarships, with grants. I know kids waiting on their loans, Parent Plus loans haven't been paid out yet. And of course, the GI Bill and military aid hadn't been paid out yet. People are distraught. There are people in California, Chicago, Atlanta, Texas, that can't just hop in a car and drive to DC, which I'm suggesting at this point, they're not answering your email and they're not picking up the phone. So you need to, you need to show up. They need to see your face. Because clearly Howard is playing in everyone's faces and you need to show up and let them know this is serious and where's the pivot to plan B? Because I know kids that turn down full rides to other schools to go to their dream school, Howard, which is now turning into their nightmare.
Going to my panel. Greg, you're a professor there at Howard University. I'm quite sure you have heard these stories before.
I'm trying to speak very deliberately right now. This is as familiar to me as the chair I'm sitting in right now. I know it's not only Howard either. So, young Sister Williams, I expect to see you on campus very shortly. And I want you to know, and I want everybody to know, the faculty know nothing about this. Because as you said, Sister Mickens, as you know, we don't get any of those emails. A university is this, quite simply. One of my colleagues said this many years ago. It is the students and the faculty. They're not coming to the swag surf, the Greek-led organizations, the football game, the parties. They're coming to the class. Everybody else is there to facilitate that enterprise, and everything else surrounds that. When you have a system where we are not aware of this, I'm aware of it because I, like a lot of people, am in with these students and their families, their communities. So I got I didn't get nearly as much as you did, Sister Mickens, because people look at you as a problem solver, and rightfully so. But this is not new. This isn't just black schools. When I was at Tennessee State as a second year trying to get my SEOG and BEOG, Homer Wheaton, who was the longtime director of financial aid at Tennessee State, would sit in his office with a line of students outside and work whatever magic he needed to work to make it work, and then say, don't worry about it. So when you say, Isabella, that you relied to your detriment, I hate to use that legal language because I suspect there may be some lawsuits coming, but when you relied on the person or persons you talked to, that is something you should have been able to rely on, because that's what, as we just heard from Sister Mickens, students have been relying on for as long as scholarships and aid have hit the accounts after the school starts even. Now, I will end with this just for now, because again, I'm trying to be very deliberate about this. Howard said in that same statement they sent you, Roland, that I saw a copy of an email because somebody sent it to me, because we don't get those emails. The faculty don't get them, y'all. Please understand that. And then they put it on their website. Everybody can look at it at the dig.howard.edu, that the university is reviewing information related to anticipated scholarship funding and other financial aid where appropriate, and will consider relevant circumstances presented Regarding pending scholarship awards and financial aid resources, shout out to whichever lawyer they paid to write that sentence so that it's indeterminate enough to say that if we continue to mess up. However, if you got the GI Bill, what you say, sis, they starting with that one first, right? All of that money is going to be taken and hit. But I will say this to you, Sister Isabella. I'll say this to you. People will accuse that of being the Howard way or the Hampton way or the Morehouse or Spelman way. But this is quite frankly the moment you have learned that some of the things that are going to help you rise to the top of whatever profession you're in, you can't trust nobody. And you got to keep all your receipts. And at the end of the day, you come see us, the faculty, because that's why you're there. And we're going to take care of you in the classroom, and the rest of that stuff, we will be shoulder to shoulder with you to get that stuff in order. I expect this to be worked out, but the first thing you're going to work it out is because you got on social media. Trust me, you got the skill set that's going to help all this get resolved. And I hate to say that because I love Howard. I love my HBCUs. I've been out 26 years. And it breaks my heart. I'm going to stop talking because it make me want to fight somebody, quite frankly.
You're a university professor. Obviously, if you're a student, this is not what you will be wanting to dealing with in July when you think in a month you're headed to campus.
Yeah, Roland. So you're right. I've been teaching in higher education. I have to note that I'm also a Howard alum, went to Howard for graduate school, and have a son who's currently enrolled at another HBCU, so very familiar with the financial aid process. And so I do want to ask, I'm curious, a young lady talked about the financial aid package. And so I'm curious, is her scholarship something she's receiving from Howard, and or are you receiving it from an external foundation, et cetera, as it relates to some of the financial aid you're describing?
Sure, of both. So I only have to pay a remaining balance of dollars, all going to be covered by external scholarships and then some. So I would also have a refund from it as well. That I couldn't pay for anything. It's just that we know, as we talked about previously, they don't come until August. That's how they normally are. Like we talked about before, everyone knows that. Howard knows that. They've been around long enough. It's not really on us, I'll be honest. It's not a reading issue at all. It's just on the students, and they shouldn't be dealing with this right now. This is ridiculous.
Laverne, final comment.
I just want to say, I love Black people. I love Black schools. My grandmother is a Howard alum, class of 1921. I went to Virginia State. I'm sad because it's Black excellence. We're supposed to be Black excellence. We're supposed to take care of our Black kids. The reason they didn't go to other schools, PWIs, other institutions, they wanted to go to the Mecca, or they wanted to go to the other HU, Hampton, FAMU, Bethune-Cookman. They want to go to these schools because they want to be immersed in their Blackness. And I love Howard, even though the Bison think that I don't. I absolutely do. I love the students. I love the faculty. I love the campus. But the administration leaves a lot to be desired. You should be taking care of these children. These are people's children. We are entrusting you with our children. And I always tell my clients this, and I'll leave with this. The way a university or college treats you during the college admissions and financial aid process is the way they'll treat you all 4 years. You better go to the school that values you. And the way they show the value is not only in the financial aid package, follow the money, but in how they treat you all throughout the process. And I'm going to just leave you with that.
In the email that Howard University sent us, they said students with questions about their enrollment status should contact the Office of Enrollment Management at enrollmentmanagement@howard.edu. Students with general questions about Howard University scholarships and other financial aid should contact the Office of Financial Aid at finaid@howard.edu. Student with questions regarding pending scholarships and student account balances should contact the Office of the Bursar at bursar, B-U-R-S-A-R, help@howard.edu. Isabella and Laverne, we appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would say this here, and that is, Howard says numerous notices were sent. Folk were aware of these particular deadlines. And I totally understand. I totally understand deadlines. I totally understand that, listen, you have to pay your money by a certain date. On the flip side is, if you have students that you know are receiving scholarships, especially from major groups like Jackie Robinson scholars and Bill Gates scholars, then you know when that money is coming in. You know this. So to me, what makes sense, and again, I've reached out to President Wayne Frederick. I've reached out to others directly. And my deal is very simple. If I'm Howard University, I got folk working on this 24 hours around the clock. That's what I got going on. Because again, what you don't want to do is be getting killed and destroyed on social media. You've got folks saying Howard University is $1 billion endowment. How is it that you're not helping students, whatever? You want to resolve the issue. And I think Laverne is right. If you had 20 or 30 students, that's a different issue. If you got 400 to 500, that's another issue. But I want to say this here, which is also separate from this. Because for students who have scholarships and everything is being paid for, that's a different conversation. We've seen changes to Pell Grants. We've seen changes to Parent Plus loans. You heard us talk about that earlier with the head of the AMA when it comes to our doctors and whatever. And Greg and Larry, I have said this my entire adult life. And that is this here. And I'm saying this, and the reason I showed that cost of Howard for a reason. And again, this is separate from what we just talked about, but I do think this has to be said, and that is, I've seen a lot of folk talk about this is my dream school. We discussed this last year when I was a parent complaining about the cost of tuition at Hampton being so high, but I'm like, but you knew that going in. I'm going to say this, and if folk don't like it, we'll then deal with it. And that is this. The reality is, Howard may be your dream school. It's private. Spelman might be your dream school. It's private. Morehouse might be your dream school. It's private. I can name many other private HBCUs. Hampton, private. Those schools cost an incredible amount of money. And I would say to any student, and I said this to my nieces and nephews, you will go to the school that my money can afford to send you to. And I think we got to have some real conversations as parents, as aunts and uncles, with children in what I call unrealistic expectations. Because, and what I mean by that is, the cost of tuition now, if I take Howard University at $64,000, and again, I'm talking about people who do not have full ride scholarships or that's covering 75, 80%. I'm saying if you are a parent of a child and that child really wants to go to Howard, 64, and then remember, 64,000 times 4. That's $250,000. Right. We haven't factored in travel back and forth. That's $250,000. Pell Grant is $6,000. 4 years is $24,000. You still left with $220,000. What I would say this, and I don't care what anyone says. I would not tell a parent to go into a massive amount of debt to send your child to their dream school if there is a state HBCU where you are. That's far cheaper. And again, I understand disciplines, I understand majors, I understand all of those things. But I do think part of the conversation when we talk about college, and I'm not just talking about HBCUs, need everybody to understand, I went to Jack Yates High School, Mass School of Communications. I was the #1 student there. I could have gone from Yates and gone to Syracuse, University of Missouri, Northwestern, the places that these top communication programs. But this is what I knew. My brother was a year ahead of me at Texas A&M. My sister was right behind me. My parents were going to have 3 kids in college at the same time. There was no way I was going to be able to go to Syracuse in Syracuse, New York, or Northwestern in Chicago, in Evanston, outside next to base of Chicago, or go to the University of Missouri, which is I think is Columbia. I forgot where they are, and be able to afford to go there all 4 years. I had to make a financial decision for my parents and me, and not what was Roland's dream school. And I know some people that USC is their dream school, Greg. It's $80,000 a year. I know some people, Larry, NYU is their dream school. I think NYU is $120,000 a year. And so what I do hope that what this conversation spurs for parents of seniors and juniors and sophomore and freshmen is that we need to be sitting down and really talking about the cost of college and what the impact is going to be on parents and others, because these are real numbers, and we're not even talking about if your child then chooses to go to graduate school, Larry.
Yeah, Roland, this is a really complicated issue, and we need a whole show to really drill down on issues relating to higher education, HBCUs, the big beautiful bill, the changes that took place, and I'm impacted as a parent about loans, etc., and also expectations and the challenges for students who are first generation students, because that's an additional layer that we haven't discussed in terms of how many of these students, this is the first time they'd be the first person in their family to go to college, and how to navigate, particularly if they're obviously they don't live in DC, how to navigate not only the financial aid process, whether you're getting external or internal loans, financial aid, but also how do you navigate after you've been admitted? And once you to matriculate, how do you choose classes? What's the process? The down payment. These are all some of the issues my wife and I have dealt with. I said as a student who's in college, but we both are college educated and understand how to navigate that and face the same challenges. But I think the overall, Roland, and I'm glad we're talking about this tonight, is there's a bigger story about the challenges relating to higher education that far larger than Howard University that we discuss as a Black community. And this is why workshops and various other things are really important to have these honest conversations you highlighted with students, whether they attend HBCU or PWI or some other kind of minority serving institution. But this is, once again, a complex situation that obviously is filled with some misinformation, but we need to really figure out, obviously, how to support these systems and students, but also the larger conversation about higher education and what it means in the Black community and attending post-secondary institutions.
Yeah, I just, again, I've had conversations, Greg, with folks at different places, and specific to HBCUs. And it was shocking to me, Greg, the number of parents and students who had no understanding of a private HBCU and a public HBCU. And I'll never forget, we were at the Howard Theater. The late Joe Madison was on the panel, God rest his soul. And we were discussing the upcoming election, so that had to have been, I think it was a midterm election. And a brother stood up, and the brother said he was blaming Obama. He was complaining about the cost of education. And he said that his desire was to be a university professor. And he had gone to Xavier for his undergrad. He had gone to Tulane for his postgraduate. And he was lamenting having $120,000 or upwards of $200,000 in debt. And I was moderating. I think Joe and I were either moderating or I was moderating, and Joe was on the panel with some others. And I said, hold up, y'all. I'm gonna take this one first. I said, here's my first question. Who told you to go to a private school as an undergrad and a private school as postgraduate? And I said, how are you blaming Obama for your student loan costs when that was a decision that you made? And it was crazy. He never factored in that they were actually private institutions who were higher than state schools.
This is the moment when I think about the possibilities of Black life in this country. And I will never give up, but it's difficult. He probably didn't think about it because when we think about our Black schools, we don't make that distinction. We don't distinguish between a Wilberforce and a Cheney. We don't distinguish between a Lincoln University and a Tennessee State. We don't distinguish between a Texas Southern or a Paul Quinn. I think there are at least three different issues here. The first one is, and I echo what, Larry, what you said, brother, what is college, particularly in the age of AI? We, I just finished summer school. We teach a class in African Studies for the incoming student athletes. Shout out to Coach Ty, the women's basketball coach, my man KB, Kenny Blakeney, the men's basketball coach, Coach Ted White, football players. So we had all of them, the volleyball players. And, they're on scholarship. They are employees of the university, effectively. And then we had a class we just wrapped up with students in the social sciences and humanities scholarship program and the CAR STEM scholars. They are on a full ride scholarship, about 60 of them. Their closing ceremony is tomorrow evening. They are shielded from the conversation we're having right now. But what is college? A lot of students, and in Texas, you see this a lot. We're beginning to see it a lot now at our schools. Students are in dual enrollment. We see students showing up who have an associate's degree in high school that they earned while in high school. They then transfer those hours, and they've effectively cut off 2 years of their college experience, thereby at a place like Howard saving $130,000. It's a smart move, but then it asks the question, are you in college to complete a course of study and graduate? Or are you also in college as a socialization? Because then you get a bunch of 20-year-olds and 19-year-olds, 20-year-olds graduating from college who perhaps are there to move right through. It makes a whole lot of sense fiscally. But that's another question. The second of the three is, what is the nature of HBCU education? I think that's where what you just described comes into focus. A young man wanting to be a college professor who would look at me and say, I want to do what you do. Well, I'm telling you right now, brother, if you come out $250,000 in debt, you're in trouble, because I also teach at the law school. And I know Howard law students who have amassed incredible debt they can retire in a relatively short order if they take a job in big law, which means they don't take the path that one of my former students who's now sitting in the United States Congress, Summer Lee, took. Because Summer ain't gonna make enough money in public service to retire a $250 billion debt. But if you go to a firm, you can retire that debt in a relatively even way. I'm saying all that to say that there are students, and we all know them, who can write the check. And increasingly, those students are going to the private HBCUs, and it is changing the nature of the student body and of teaching and learning, because the students who come from families and communities that can write the check, quite frankly, it's a conversation we're not going to have. We talked about what happened down there with Chase. These students come from families whose class posture may not transfer as quickly to the notion of uplifting the whole community through a notion of public service or community service, even though all the rhetoric is going to say that. And that is something that Howard has been grappling with for quite some time. This isn't a question of blame. This brings me to the third and final point. What are the structural issues at HBCUs? You've talked yourself right in the face, bro, talking about this and what has happened in the age of the neoliberal university. If you do not have the resources, but the expectations of our people remain the same, the expectations of the students remain the same, the faculty increasingly frustrated because universities are now outsourcing as much as they can. I wouldn't be surprised they knock on my door sometime and say, we want you to teach 10,000 students on Zoom, and we're going to give them college credit everywhere, because that's what they did, tried to fail with Coursera, and the Ivies tried it, Yale tried all that stuff. But that third question has led in the neoliberal university to the outsourcing of support staff. Howard is no different. Howard's not an outlier in this. What do I mean by this? You call financial aid, and you're getting a call center that is no longer on campus. I can't walk in and see Mr. Wheaton like I did 40 years ago. Mr. Wheaton don't exist. Somebody has outsourced a lot of that work. And so then what happens is, with a bloodless situation like that, you end up in a situation where even as a young person, you learn to walk the campus, go into the room. Then you realize instead of 10 people in the bursar's office, there is now 1 or 2. And that stuff is now electronic. And then AI is going to replace more and more of it. So what happens is, what happened this at Howard? See, I was bemused by it, familiar with a lot of it. But when that child said this, the dawn hit. She said, they told me it would be all right. Let me tell you something. That is the entire history of HBCU education, particularly when it relates to financial aid. It'll be okay. It's going to come. We heard her say it. It's going to be okay. And then something happens in a space that is no longer under the direct control of the institution. It's still under control, but it may be outsourced. It may be an algorithm. And then, boom, everybody gone. And it's like, what? There's nobody with any institutional memory that says, wait a minute, hold, everybody calm down.
Mm-hmm.
Quite frankly, I'll be candid here. Again, I don't want to say too much, but this led to a structural failure that blew up buildings at Howard and other universities. When it's like, look, you need the old heads around and say, look, don't take that temperature down below this degree.
Mm-hmm.
But when you lose institutional memory, you lose that, and you don't have the infrastructure. So this is not a blame game. It's an assessment in real time of what we just saw. They're going to fix this. But the simple fact of the matter is they shouldn't have had to do it. Between the pressures of the neoliberal university, between the question of the nature of HBCU education, and then the broader question of what is college, young people who have figured this out are showing up at our universities now with 2 years of college under their belt and cutting that tuition down. My niece, who is a country level top tier track student, been wanting to go to Howard since she could run around on that campus, come see me. She is at North Carolina A&T and having the time of her life. And I wear so much A&T stuff around Howard's campus, they think I'm a visiting professor. I went to Tennessee State University. Do you understand what I'm saying, Roland Martin? I am an HBCU field Negro. Please understand. If your child has Howard as a dream school, come. But if you can't afford it, I promise for God, Alabama State is a great, not only alternative, you will not regret it. You got to treat HBCUs like there's 105 of them and it's one big campus with 105 locations, as far as I'm concerned, bro.
I had somebody, we're way over time, but this is a critically important conversation.
Man, I'm sorry about that, bro.
No, that's not you, it's me. I'm the one who took it over time. I had somebody in the chat say, when this will happen with white schools, go to my iPad. See, this is why y'all need to stop saying dumb shit. This right here, okay, tracking college closures and mergers. At least 49 colleges have closed or announced closures, and at least 40 have merged since March 2020. More than 50,000 students have been impacted. So I need y'all to recognize there's a thing called the college cliff. We are seeing declining enrollment in K through 12. Y'all, Tulane and Oregon have announced that their enrollment is declining. Temple University, Philadelphia,
absolutely,
has talked about a $200 million shortfall because of declining student enrollment. Y'all, that's population shifts. I need y'all to hear what I'm saying.
That's right.
Okay, so if you're seeing fewer babies being born, y'all need to see, do y'all now understand why immigration is an issue? Because see, I've done 21, 22 college commencements, and when I did Morgan State's commencement, the number of students from the Middle East who were in the graduating class, see, y'all ain't paying attention. A lot of y'all don't realize that other nations, 107 HBCUs, or the number could be higher, but let's just say other HBCUs, it's about 250 to 270,000 students. 20% of the students at HBCUs are non-black.
That's right.
So people need to understand what's going on here. What I am saying, that this is a moment that these parents are going through all this stuff right now. If you have a child who is a senior, or who is a junior or sophomore or freshman or 8th, 7th, 6th, 5th, 4th, 3rd, 2nd, 1st, kindergarten, pre-K, the moment that child comes out the womb, you need to be looking at the reality of college education. These programs which allow you to put money away that then is invested and grows, we should be maximizing in those programs. Because what too many of us are doing, we're waiting until they graduate from high school to go, how are we going to pay for this? The other thing, though, is, and this is why I started this, is we have to make smart financial decisions. I'm telling you right now, I thought about it, and if I asked my brother Reggie and my sister Levita, I don't think my parents sent us a combined $1,000 in our 3 college careers. I don't think so, because it was two more sisters at home. So the decision I made was an economic decision. And so we have to, y'all, we got to be just real about the 103 HBCUs. We just got to be real about this here. I was told that 30% of Howard Pell Grant students return. That means the lowest income students. That means 70% don't come back. That's because they can't afford.
Watch this. Howard's Pell eligible number is the highest by far in the DC area. And private HBCUs take, if you were an accountant, Roland, you would say, oh no, y'all can't take all these Pell eligible students. Why? Because that's the mission. Georgetown, American, GW, they wouldn't let you. Howard takes those Pell eligible students because that's the mission. But are they setting them up wrong? Is that a setup for failure? And that's where, voting don't matter. Damn it, if you don't get a damn Congress and a president that will take that cap that Adam Clayton Powell put in place back up, this is why elections matter.
So
if the Pell,
yes.
Is that a setup? What you say?
Oh yeah, right. And so the point there is, if you are depending on a Pell Grant to go to college, Howard, Spelman, Morehouse could be your dream school. I'm telling you,
that's right.
You cannot afford it, because here's the other problem. And Morehouse had to deal with this here, and Howard deal with it. All the schools deal with it. When the students have to leave, they're now impacting the financial aid of the next student because of default rate. So
that's right.
I would rather, and again, I know folk want to go to their dream school. I would rather folk go to places closer to home. I would rather you go to a state school, and I'm not hating on private HBCUs, private PWIs. I'm simply saying, go where your money can afford to send you, because the goal is to graduate. The goal is not to try to go to your dream school and go there for 1 year and then come home, and now you got to go to work, and then now you got to go somewhere else, and now you got to come out, and now all of a sudden your college experience is 6, 7, 8, 9 years. College, the cost of going to college is arguably, and when I look at home prices, it's arguably going to be the first or the second largest financial decision you will make in your entire life. If I'm looking at $150,000, $200,000, $250,000 in student loan debt, y'all, we got to be having honest conversations about you going to school where my money can afford to send you. And we got to, and listen, and I believe in aspiration. I believe in all of that. I also believe in reality. And I'm telling you right now, I would have been insane to tell my mama and daddy with a 1,500 square foot house in Clinton Park in Houston with 3 sisters at home, hey, I want to go to the top broadcasting program in the country. I want to go to Syracuse University in upstate New York. And if I ain't got a full ride, how in the hell are we going to afford that? Y'all, it's just having some real conversations. All right, Larry, Greg, I appreciate y'all joining us and staying late on the show. Thank you so very much. Appreciate all of y'all for watching as well. Do me a favor, y'all, support the work that we do. See, this is why this show matters. MS Now, CNN, and Fox and the rest of them, they ain't having these conversations. And it's a whole bunch of black people with other shows and podcasts. They ain't having these conversations. See, we ain't having a little titillating, gossipy. This is why we ain't doing that. The discussions that we have here are real life discussions that are impacting African Americans all across this country. Your support matters. If you want to join our Bring the Funk fan club, we've had nearly 50,000 people donate in almost 8 years. We're closing in on 2 million YouTube subscribers. We are ranked in the YouTube top 100 nearly every week. That's a testament to y'all watching. So do me a favor, support our work, give to us via Cash App, use a Stripe QR code, you see it right here. As for credit cards as well, if you're listening, go to blackstarnetwork.com where you can, of course, get all the ways to contribute. Checks and money order, make it payable to Roland Martin Unfiltered, P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C., 20037-0196. PayPal's R Martin Unfiltered, Venmo RM Unfiltered, Zelle Roland at RolandSMartin.com, Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Download the Black Star Network app, Apple phone, Android phone, Apple TV, Android TV, Amazon Fire TV, Roku, Samsung Smart TV. Be sure to get our Roland Martin Unfiltered swag by going to shopblackstarnetwork.com. You can also get our America at 250 shirts. They're available on the site as well. Support these black-owned companies you see throughout marketplace, folks. They, of course, more than 50 black-owned companies. Every product you see here is on that website. When you buy from those companies, you're also supporting this show as well. And so we had them on the show the other day. Of course, Tribe and Oak candles. I got it sitting right here. We got cake mix. We got all kind of stuff on there, so y'all check it out. Download the app, Fanbase, black-owned app. Not just for black folks. You can follow me there as well at Roland S. Martin. Folks, that's it. Tomorrow, I'm going to announce a new show we're launching here on Roland Martin Unfiltered that's specifically targeting brothers. That's right. We are expanding. This is why support is so critical because, y'all, we ain't sitting here having BS conversations. That's why we don't do gossip. We keep it real. We keep it honest. We keep it black. I'm going to see y'all tomorrow right here at Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Holla!